Beneath the endless sky of China lies a world of natural wonders so surreal, so hauntingly beautiful, that they often defy belief. From mountains pierced by moonlit arches to volcanoes long asleep yet still humming with ancient power, these are the places that stir the imagination and silence the breath. This is not the China of neon cities or bustling markets. This is a deeper China, where mist rolls over forgotten temples, forests guard secrets older than dynasties, and stone itself seems carved by the hands of gods. But before we continue, subscribe to the channel and like the video. High in the far northwest of China, straddling the vast provinces of Gansu and Qinghai, the majestic Mount Guilin, known as Qilianshan, rises like an icy spine along the northern fringe of the Tibetan Plateau. It is no ordinary mountain range. Towering and myth-laden, the Qilian Mountains form a natural boundary between the Gobi Desert to the north and the verdant alpine meadows to the south, guarding the ancient Hushi Corridor, the crucial artery of the Silk Road for centuries. Their very presence shaped the course of Chinese civilization, both literally and symbolically. Snow-capped year-round, their pale summits glint like polished silver against a deep blue sky, mirroring the still, cold purity of glacier that feeds streams cutting down their sides into valleys blooming with summer grasses. Qilianshan's geological story is ancient and violent. Forged during the collision between the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates, the range is a textbook display of continental uplift. Today, these mountains continue to inch upward, shaping an ever-changing landscape of crags, cliffs, and glacial formations. Many of its peaks soar above 5,000 meters, 16,400 feet, but the range's soul lies not just in its altitude, but in the contrast it draws against the surrounding arid zones. In a land where deserts dominate, Qilianshan emerges as a green and white anomaly, brimming with meltwater-fed rivers and alpine grasslands. The visual character of Qilianshan is dramatic. Fields of wildflowers erupt in kaleidoscopic bloom across the alpine meadows during summer, drawing herders and their flocks to one of the highest pastures in China. It is here that traditional Tibetan and Mongolian cultures intermingle. Nomadic tents, their white canvas flapping in the wind, dot the meadows like fallen stars. Yaks and sheep graze beneath glacial peaks, and the air carries the earthy scent of grass mingled with the faint trace of smoke from dung fires. Life is both harsh and timeless here. Historically, the Qilian Mountains held deep symbolic meaning. Ancient Chinese texts reference them as the Heavenly Mountains, sacred and remote. The famous Han Dynasty envoy Zhongqian likely passed through the Hushi Corridor beneath these peaks, paving the way for China's diplomatic and commercial expansion westward. Centuries later, the Tang Dynasty built fortified outposts along this corridor, many of which still leave haunting remnants of walls and towers now being reclaimed by sand and grass. Despite the harsh conditions, the region's biodiversity is astonishing. The high elevations and isolation have fostered numerous endemic species. Snow leopards still roam these peaks, elusive and rare. Tibetan gazelles and blue sheep cling to life on cliffside ledges, while golden eagles circle above in search of prey. Lower down, spruce forests and juniper groves shield red foxes and marmots. Botanists consider the Qilian Range a high-altitude treasure trove, with medicinal herbs like rhodiola and snow lotus found only in such extreme habitats. The glacier of Qilianshan are another vital aspect of its identity. These icy masses, particularly on peaks like Gangshika and Lenglongling, are the lifeblood of rivers such as the Heihe, crucial to the ecosystems and human settlements below. Yet, like so many glacial systems around the world, they are retreating. Climate change is shrinking the glacier at an alarming rate, threatening the delicate balance between mountain and desert, water and dust. Researchers closely monitor the changes, knowing the stakes stretch far beyond local impact. At sunrise, the mountains blush. A pink and gold hue spills over the snowfields, illuminating every jagged ridge and chasm. During twilight, the range takes on an eerie serenity, as mists rise from the lower valleys and the stars begin to shine sharply in the thin mountain air. In such moments, Qilianshan feels not of this earth, but like a threshold between the human world and some higher domain. In recent years, increasing infrastructure, roads, observation decks, and even ski resorts have brought more tourists to the area. Yet, the scale of the mountains dwarfs human interference. The region remains largely untamed, its grandeur humbling even the most well-traveled. For those willing to endure thin air and long treks, rewards await. Crystalline lakes hidden in glacial basins, ancient stone cairns left by forgotten pilgrims, and the overwhelming silence that only such vast spaces can provide. Guilin is more than a geographical feature. It is a mythic wall, a memory of ice and empire, a living monument to both nature's persistence and the transience of all things. Its valleys whisper old Silk Road legends, its peaks shine with celestial purity, and its meadows cradle a fragile, irreplaceable world. As one stands facing these immense, glacial sentinels, there is only reverence for the land, for the sky, and for the long, eternal moment that is Guilin. As the winding mountain road snakes its way upward through the mists of western Sichuan, a dramatic shift in landscape, atmosphere, and spirit occurs. Here rises Mount Jiadua, Jeduoshan, standing as a sentinel over the frontier of two vastly different worlds. To the east, the lush, bustling valleys of Han China still echo with the sounds of cities and agriculture. To the west, the vast highlands of the Tibetan Plateau begin, a realm of thin air, brilliant light, and spiritual expanse. Jeduoshan is not just a mountain. It is a gateway. It is the first towering guardian of Tibet's sacred geography. At an elevation of roughly 4,298 meters, 14,100 feet, the Jiadua Pass is one of the highest roads accessible by vehicle in all of China. The climb is both physically and psychologically intense. As one ascends, the oxygen thins, the forests give way to alpine shrubs and eventually bare, wind-burnished slopes. Even in summer, patches of snow cling to the shadowed flanks of the mountain, and the sky takes on an astonishing clarity, deep, endless, and wide. The pass road curls along knife-edge ridgelines, hemmed in by crags and prayer flag-draped cairns that seem to whisper in the wind. With every breath, travelers feel the unmistakable sensation of crossing into a different realm. This mountain, though lesser known to outsiders than some Himalayan giants, holds immense importance to the local people. For centuries, Jeduoshan has been the spiritual and cultural threshold separating the Tibetan world from Han China. Its slopes have been traversed by traders, pilgrims, monks, and nomads, all of whom pause to make offerings at the summit pass, where brilliant tapestries of fluttering prayer flags crisscross the landscape like rivers of color. Every flag flaps a mantra into the wind, an invocation of peace, protection, and transcendence, carried across the mountain range and beyond. Geologically, Jeduoshan is part of the complex Hungduan range system, formed by the violent clash between tectonic plates that gave birth to the Himalayas. But while those mighty mountains lie to the west, the ranges in Sichuan like Jeduoshan represent the outer ramparts of the Tibetan Plateau, creating abrupt transitions between lowland valleys and high-altitude expanses. The topography here is stunningly vertical. Deep gorges give way to soaring summits, often wreathed in cloud or shining stark white under the sun. The Jiadua Pass itself slices dramatically through this terrain, a lifeline between the counties of Kangding and Tagong, and a pilgrimage path in its own right. The flora and fauna of Mount Jiadua mirror this tension between zones. On the lower eastern slopes, dense forests of spruce and fir stretch toward the sky, home to red pandas, musk deer, and pheasants. As altitude increases, the tree line vanishes, replaced by wind-blasted tundra and resilient alpine herbs. Here, golden eagles patrol the thermals and the cries of marmots echo from rocky outcrops. In spring, wildflowers, tiny, bright, and improbably tenacious, dot the grasses with blue, purple, and yellow. This is the edge of habitable earth, where life endures in conditions too harsh for comfort but too beautiful for indifference. Spiritually, Jeduoshan occupies a revered place in Tibetan Buddhist cosmology. Mountains in Tibet are not just rock and ice, they are the bodies of deities, the abodes of spirits, and the embodiments of cosmic order. It is said that the mountain shelters protective deities that must be honored before crossing. Locals often make offerings of barley flour, incense, or small tokens at stone altars along the roadside. Some walk the perimeter of the mountain on foot as a form of pilgrimage, circling the sacred peak in a ritual known as Kora, which is believed to cleanse karma and bring merit. The town of Kangding lies just east of the pass and has historically served as the staging point for expeditions westward. Known as the gateway to Tibet, Kangding hums with a unique fusion of Tibetan and Han influences. Its narrow alleyways bustle with yak butter sellers, Tibetan noodle shops, and Buddhist chants floating from hillside monasteries. From here, one can see the shadowy silhouette of Jeduoshan looming in the distance, a colossal wave of stone forever poised to crash upon the plains. In autumn, the mountain takes on a golden glow. Grasses dry to a radiant amber, and the sun sets low across the horizon, casting elongated shadows across the ridgelines. The temperature drops rapidly after dark, and the stars begin to burn fiercely in the thin atmosphere. With no urban light pollution, the Milky Way drapes itself overhead in crystalline splendor. In the silence, broken only by the wind and the occasional bleating of a distant yak, one feels not alone but in the presence of something ancient, immense, and watching. Today, the modern road over Jiduoshan has brought easier access to this once difficult crossing, but the spirit of the mountain remains untouched. Even cars slow instinctively near the summit, and travelers step out to breathe the freezing air, turn prayer wheels, and gaze out over the vast horizon of the Tibetan plateau stretching into eternity. Few places in the world offer such a raw, abrupt, and emotional threshold between civilizations. Jiduoshan is not simply a climb in elevation, it is a climb in consciousness. It is the moment where the known world ends and the sacred begins. It is a place of sky and stone, memory and myth, where the earth rises to meet the heavens and dares the traveler to look beyond. Encircling the colossal Mount Gongar, the king of Sichuan mountains, is a breathtaking constellation of lesser-known peaks, valleys, and high passes collectively referred to as the Mount Gongar subpeaks or the Lesser Gongar Range. Though these surrounding summits do not reach the towering height of Gongar's central spire, standing at 7,556 meters, 24,790 feet, the highest peak east of the Himalayas, they possess their own gravity, their own wilderness, and their own quiet. Magic. Here in western Sichuan, amidst the complex topography of the Hengduan Mountains, these sub-peaks form a labyrinth of snow-draped ridges, icy river basins, and jewel-toned glacial lakes, woven together by ancient pilgrimage trails and chiseled by the breath of the gods. Approaching this region from the east or north, the terrain shifts rapidly from human settlements and pastoral fields to steep, forested ravines and then suddenly into a realm of stark, towering rock. These are not rolling hills but abrupt, raw escarpments, the fractured bones of earth upthrust by tectonic fury. Each peak seems to pierce the sky, jagged and defiant. And among them, life clings with resilience. Glacial valleys carve serpentine paths through these ranges, their waters tinged turquoise by powdered rock flour, while rhododendrons bloom defiantly on cliffsides, and alpine meadows burst into color during the short highland summer. The sub-peaks of Gongar, such as Mount Jiazi, 6,540 m, Mount Yangmelong, 6,060 m, and Mount Riwuki, offer an overwhelming sense of remoteness and grandeur. These are not just geographical features, they are sacred guardians of the land. Tibetan Buddhists revere each of them as the embodiments of divine beings, and the region as a whole is considered one of the most spiritually potent on the eastern edge of the Tibetan plateau. Pilgrims and locals perform lengthy Kora circuits around the mountains, trekking for days or even weeks along routes that snake over snowy passes, around glacier-fed lakes, and through mist-draped forests. Along these trails, one encounters countless chorten, stupas, many walls carved with sacred inscriptions, and endless arrays of prayer flags, blue, white, red, green, and yellow, fluttering wildly in the mountain wind, each color invoking elemental protection. Among the most iconic sites in the Lesser Gongar region is the Yaha Pass. Standing at over 4,600 meters, this high saddle offers a heart-stopping panorama of Mount Gongar and its retinue of peaks. On clear days, the central peak rises like an ivory pyramid from a sea of lesser summits, its slopes etched with hanging glacier and cornices of blinding snow. Beneath it, the land folds into deep green valleys and blue ice fields, a dramatic interplay of vertical extremes. One of the hidden treasures in this region is the glacial lake known as Milk Sea, Nyonai High, an otherworldly basin cradled between soaring cliffs and ice-covered ridges. The lake's pale aquamarine waters shimmer under the alpine sun, often reflecting both the sky above and the snowy teeth of surrounding peaks. Reaching it requires strenuous trekking, sometimes days on foot, but those who persevere are rewarded with one of the most surreal, untouched alpine scenes in all of China. Silence reigns here, save for the whistle of the wind or the distant crack of moving ice. Another legendary lake is Daughter's Lake, Enua High, nestled in a remote basin with dark blue waters and towering ridges mirrored on its surface. Folktales claim the lake was formed by the tears of mountain spirits, mourning for those who lost their lives in avalanche or pilgrimage. Indeed, the Gongar Range, despite its beauty, has always been treacherous. Even seasoned climbers approach the region with humility. Mount Gongar itself has earned the moniker the Killer Mountain of the East, and many of its sub-peaks, while visually stunning, remain largely unexplored and unmapped in mountaineering terms. The villages scattered on the lower slopes, like Yanzigu, Liuba, and Tsemi, have coexisted with these mountains for centuries. Inhabitants, primarily ethnic Tibetans, live in a tight rhythm with the seasons. Yak herding, barley cultivation, and prayer form the structure of daily life. The air smells of butter lamps and pine smoke, and the walls of houses are often adorned with colorful mandalas and protective symbols. The people revere the mountains not just as landmarks but as living entities, gods, ancestors, and teachers, watching over them in both kindness and fury. Climatic conditions here are volatile and unpredictable. Storms roll in with little warning, cloaking the peaks in curtains of snow and ice. In winter, temperatures plummet to deadly lows, and even in summer, sudden hailstorms or blizzards can occur above 4,000 meters. Avalanches thunder down steep couloirs, and glaciers creak ominously as they slowly shift. This is a place where nature does not accommodate humanity. It demands reverence, preparation, and surrender. And yet, it is precisely this raw, unfiltered natural power that draws a growing number of trekkers, explorers, and spiritual seekers to the region. Increasingly, well-managed ecotourism projects have developed in the lower valleys, especially in areas like Hailuogu Glacier Park, offering more accessible ways to witness the awe-inspiring power of the Gongar Massif. Here, modern cable cars and viewing platforms coexist, albeit uneasily, with ancient traditions and fragile ecosystems. But deeper into the lesser Gongar range, beyond the reach of vehicles or networks, lie lands still ruled by silence and snow. In the golden light of late afternoon, the glacier catch fire with color, orange, rose, and gold streak across ice walls hundreds of meters high. From high ridges, one can watch the shadow of Gongar stretch endlessly westward across a sea of clouds and lesser peaks. And in those moments, with the biting wind on one's face and the sound of prayer flags snapping above, it becomes clear, these are not merely sub-peaks. They are the living ribs of a sacred mountain, echoing the heartbeat of the earth itself. Far out in the sweeping, wind-stirred realms of Xinjiang, where the vast steppes meet the jagged ramparts of Central Asia's greatest peaks, lies one of China's most dreamlike mountain ranges. The Nalati Range, a key sub-range of the larger and legendary Tian Shan Mountains. Known in Chinese as Nalati Shan, this high-altitude paradise unfurls in wave after wave of grassy ridgelines, cedar-blanketed slopes, flower-spangled meadows, and rushing glacier-fed streams. The name Nalati, derived from a Kazakh phrase meaning the place where the sun first appears, is no poetic exaggeration. At dawn, the early light strikes the ridgelines with ethereal brilliance, casting golden hues across hills that seem sculpted from velvet, soft yet immense, vast yet intimate. Geographically, the Nalati Range forms part of the eastern Tian Shan, Heavenly Mountains, a colossal system stretching over 2,500 kilometers from Uzbekistan through Kazakhstan and deep into western China. The Tian Shan are ancient, one of the oldest mountain systems on Earth, and the Nalati section, while not the tallest, is arguably one of the most inviting and visually harmonious. Its rolling alpine pastures rise between 1,800 and 3,500 meters, dotted with wildflowers and aromatic herbs. These meadows have been summer grazing grounds for nomadic Kazakh herders for centuries, and their presence adds a deep cultural resonance to the landscape. The Nalati Range is perhaps most famous for its sweeping grasslands, lush, soft, and vividly green during the warm months. These aren't sparse highland tufts but full, thick carpets of pasture that undulate beneath the sky like a living ocean. During spring and early summer, these meadows explode into bloom, with an astonishing array of flora: yellow buttercups, purple irises, wild tulips, edelweiss, and rare medicinal plants. Butterflies dance among the flowers, bees hum in the crisp air, and the breeze carries the faint scent of pine and mountain rain. Everywhere, the eye is met with gentle motion, clouds drifting low over hilltops, horses galloping across fields, and herders moving among their flocks, cloaked in traditional Chapan robes and fur-lined hats. Unlike the vertical, craggy severity of many Chinese mountains, Nalati is a land of sweeping forms and layered horizons. Glacial rivers, cold and fast, twist through the valleys, flanked by thick belts of spruce and juniper. Higher still, patches of lingering snow gleam on shadowed slopes even into midsummer. It is a land where altitude doesn't feel forbidding, but uplifting, inviting you to keep walking, to crest the next ridge and see what lies beyond. At nearly every turn, the views open out into panorama, endless mountains rolling westward into Kazakhstan, the distant shimmer of Lake Seyram to the north, and the snowbound crowns of the Greater Tian Shan in the south. The human presence here is both minimal and profound. For centuries, Kazakh nomads have followed a semi-migratory lifestyle in the Nalati region, driving their herds, mainly horses, sheep, and yaks, between winter lowlands and summer highland pastures. Their yurts, circular tents made of felt and wood, are more than shelters. They are cultural artifacts, expressions of a worldview shaped by wind, grass, and sky. Inside, the yurts are decorated with bold textile patterns, ancestral tools, and sometimes fragments of epic poetry. Life here is guided by rhythm, season, and animal movement. To ride a horse across the Nalati grasslands is to step into the living memory of the Silk Road. These trails were once traversed by Sogdian traders, Tang dynasty envoys, and Mongol warriors. Even today, old caravan paths wind their way through the valleys, some marked only by cairns and fading hoof prints. In quiet moments, it's easy to believe the past still breathes here, that the sound of hoofbeats could belong to a caravan, and not just the herds of today's herdsmen. There is spiritual depth, too, in the Nalati range. While it lacks the temple complexes and shrines of more populated mountains, the landscape itself has long been considered sacred. Kazakh oral tradition imbues the land with stories of spirits and guardian mountains, while Islamic influence, brought by centuries of contact with Central Asian cultures, has merged with animist beliefs to create a layered, intimate reverence for place. Burial mounds dot the hillsides, stone rings marking the resting places of ancestors, while solitary trees or rock formations are tied with bits of cloth, offerings to the unseen forces of the land. Ecologically, Nalati is a haven. Beyond the open meadows and forests lies a delicate alpine ecosystem home to rare and endangered species. Snow leopards still prowl these heights, elusive and near mythic, while golden eagles ride the thermals, their piercing cries echoing across the valleys. Marmots, foxes, and ibex inhabit the slopes, and in spring, migratory birds fill the sky. Conservation efforts are ongoing, and large portions of the region have been designated as protected nature reserves, balancing tourism with ecological integrity. In recent decades, the Chinese government has developed the Nalati Grassland Scenic Area to encourage sustainable tourism. Wooden boardwalks, viewing pavilions, and eco-friendly lodging now exist in some zones, offering controlled access to the fragile alpine terrain. Yet the core experience remains unspoiled. Visitors can still ride with Kazakh guides into remote valleys, drink tea in a felt-lined yurt, or sit alone on a hill and watch the sky slowly change from azure to fire orange as the sun sinks behind the western horizon. What makes the Nalati range so surreal is its combination of softness and scale. Unlike the jagged teeth of the Karakoram or the raw edges of the Himalayas, Nalati seduces with its curves, its folds, its deep breathing quiet. Yet it is immense, open, and humbling. The very air feels broader here, the sky more generous. And through it all runs a deep human heartbeat, the pulse of a nomadic culture that continues to live in harmony with the land, whispering songs of horses, wind, and freedom. At night, under the pristine skies, constellations blaze above the range, their light untouched by city glow. Campfires flicker in the distance. The faint sound of a dombra, a traditional two-stringed instrument, might drift through the grass. And in those moments, surrounded by the mountains of Nalati, one feels not alone but profoundly accompanied by the land, the stars, and the echo of every rider who came before. Tucked into the lush, mist-veiled heart of Sichuan province, Mount Hamay, Hemetian, sometimes translated as Crane Cry Mountain, rises like a forgotten hymn above a sea of green valleys and ancient rivers. Though less widely known than its nearby sibling Mount Hamay, Hemetian possesses a deeply sacred and almost mysterious presence, wrapped in centuries of Buddhist lore, Daoist legends, and cultural reverence. This mountain is not merely a geographic rise, it is a vessel of memory, belief, and quiet revelation, where temples cling to sheer cliffs and the wind carries the murmurs of ancient chants. From afar, Mount Hamay appears as a ripple in the landscape, gentle, forested, almost unassuming. But as one ascends its winding trails, a transformation begins. The air grows cooler and laden with moisture. Ferns and mosses coat stone walls. Bamboo groves whisper with secrets. Mist rolls in across the treetops like a living being, parting just enough to reveal fleeting glimpses of pagoda rooftops or a sliver of carved rock stairway disappearing into the clouds. The name Hame evokes the call of a crane, a creature long associated with transcendence and spiritual purity in Chinese culture. Legends say that cranes once flew in flocks around the mountain, their cries echoing through the valleys as signs of divine presence. Today, the mountain still feels like a place suspended between earth and sky, steeped in a serenity so profound it feels untouched by the passage of time. The spiritual heart of Hemetian lies in its cliffside monasteries and scattered temples. These are not grand complexes filled with tourists, but modest, deeply atmospheric sanctuaries built into the very bones of the mountain. The most renowned of these is Lingguan Temple, perched dramatically on a rocky ledge with views that seem to stretch across half of Sichuan. Monks and nuns here live simple, ascetic lives, rising before dawn to chant sutras, tending to incense shrines, and welcoming the occasional pilgrim or seeker who arrives with silent reverence. The temple's weathered prayer halls contain faded frescoes, ancient Buddha statues, and delicate wood carvings that seem to breathe history. Another notable site is Fuaguang Temple, meaning Temple of Buddha's Radiance. Built directly into the mountainside, its prayer hall faces east, capturing the golden rays of sunrise as they pour through gaps in the forest canopy. Here, meditation is not confined to walls. Monks often sit in rock alcoves or forest clearings, wrapped in robes of saffron or ash gray, blending into the stillness of the mountain itself. The trail system around Hemetian is a quiet revelation. Unlike more commercialized pilgrimage routes, these paths are often narrow, rugged, and occasionally overgrown, lined with stone lanterns, half-buried relics, and moss-covered statues of bodhisattvas. In spring, azaleas bloom in bursts of pink and white along the ridgelines, while the chirping of birds and rustling of leaves form a natural soundtrack to one's ascent. Waterfalls cascade from unseen springs, their clear streams forming pools said to possess healing properties. Hikers, pilgrims, and monks alike pause here to bathe hands or fill flasks, paying silent homage to the mountain's lifeblood. Culturally, Hemetian holds a unique place in the Buddhist topography of Western China. Though it has always been overshadowed by Hemetian's monumental temples and pilgrimage fame, Hemetian has long been regarded as a place for inner cultivation, a retreat from worldly clamor, a cradle for those who seek insight rather than spectacle. Historical records suggest that hermits and mendicant monks have inhabited its caves and shelters for over 1,000 years. Some carved crude meditation chambers into the cliffs, others inscribed sutras into the rock walls, where their characters now fade under lichen and rain. And yet, it is not only Buddhism that whispers through the leaves of Hemetian. Daoist traditions, too, permeate the mountain. Locals speak of immortal sages who once practiced alchemy here, of celestial patterns seen in the stars above the ridges, and of hidden caves that hold secrets of longevity and balance. Some shrines, though Buddhist in architecture, retain symbols of Daoist cosmology, Taiji diagrams etched beside lotus flowers, or cranes depicted flying alongside dragons. This syncretism speaks to the deeply layered spiritual nature of the region, where faith traditions flow together like converging mountain streams. As one reaches the higher ridgelines, the panoramic views from Hemetian are nothing short of sublime. The terrain unfolds in waves of misty mountains, forested valleys, and distant rice fields glittering in the sunlight. On clear days, the horizon stretches to the blue-gray silhouettes of other sacred ranges, an endless procession of peaks that seem to melt into the sky. The silence at the summit is palpable. Not empty, but full of wind, cloud, and the ineffable feeling of being on sacred ground. At dusk, the mountain takes on a mystical glow. Lanterns flicker to life in temple courtyards. The last rays of the sun gild the tiled rooftops with amber light. Prayer flags ripple in the rising night wind. Somewhere, a gong sounds, low, resonant, ancient. It echoes across the mountain, carried down through trees, over ravines, and into the dreams of those resting in wooden guest quarters or curled up in meditation cells along the ridge. Modern development has barely brushed Hemetian. Though a few paths have been maintained and guest lodges added near trailheads, the mountain remains largely untouched by mass tourism. Those who come here often do so with intention: artists, monks, seekers, and those who've heard the mountain's name in whispers, drawn by a yearning they can't quite name. There are no cable cars, no neon signs, only footsteps on ancient stone, incense smoke curling through bamboo, and the occasional cry of a bird, a reminder, perhaps, of the cranes that once circled this sacred sky. Mount Hamei is not dramatic in scale or fame, but it is a mountain of depth, grace, and stillness. A place for quiet transformation. A mountain where the soul may sit, unnoticed by the world, and bloom. In the parched heartland of northern China, where the Lurs Plateau meets the edges of the Great Tengah Desert, rises a mountain range as austere as it is mesmerizing, Mount Hilan, or Helanshan. Towering above the dry plains of Ningxia and forming the natural western boundary of the Yellow River's fertile basin, Helanshan is not a place of lush greenery or mist-wrapped forests. Instead, it is a range of brutal beauty, scarred, sunburnt, and immense, its slopes slashed by ancient gorges, its canyons home to echoes of vanished civilizations, and its cliffs adorned with prehistoric art that speaks across the millennia. Stretching nearly 200 kilometers north to south and with peaks climbing over 3,500 meters at their highest, the Helan Mountains are a geological fortress guarding the desert. To their east, the Yellow River winds through the densely populated and agriculturally rich Ningxia Plain, a historical heartland of Chinese civilization. To the west lies the Tengah Desert, a vast and creeping sea of sand. Helanshan stands precisely at the intersection of these worlds, its massive flanks serving as a climatic and cultural dividing line for millennia. The range is dry, wind-carved, and unapologetically rugged. Its surface is a palette of sandstone, shale, and granite, its cliffs striped with mineral veins of red, black, and ochre. From a distance, the mountains appear as waves of jagged stone surging out of the desert floor. Up close, they reveal an intricate labyrinth of ravines, weathered boulders, and surprisingly verdant pockets hidden in shaded gorges, where seasonal snowmelt gives life to slender poplars, junipers, and scrub brush. These high crevices are home to Argly sheep, golden eagles, and even the elusive snow leopard, a remnant of a wilder, older world. Yet what sets Mount Helan apart from other Chinese ranges is not only its natural grandeur, but its staggering human history. The cliffs and caves of Helanshan are home to some of the richest collections of prehistoric rock art in East Asia. These petroglyphs, over 10,000 discovered to date back as far as 10,000 years and are found etched onto dark patina-coated rock faces, often in high, remote locations. They depict animals, hunting scenes, shamanic rituals, abstract symbols, and even anthropomorphic figures with headdresses and masks. These ancient carvings provide a direct link to the minds and hearts of Neolithic tribes who once roamed these lands, peoples whose names we may never know, but whose visual language remains as haunting as it is expressive. A hunter aims his bow at a wild ibex, rows of dancers with raised arms encircle a sun motif, antlered deities gaze out from cliff faces worn by wind and time. Some images are precise and naturalistic, others deeply abstract, suggesting ceremonial purposes or spiritual visions. Unlike written texts, these images are open to interpretation, layered with symbolic meaning that speaks to the deep cosmology of early human experience. Further evidence of Helanshan's strategic and cultural importance can be found in its fortress ruins and ancient walls. During the Warring States period and later dynasties, the mountains served as a natural bulwark against incursions from the west. Defensive structures, remnants of forts, watchtowers, and walls, can still be found crumbling among the ridges, some over 1,000 years old. These structures blend almost seamlessly into the rocky terrain, built from local stone and reinforced with rammed earth. They whisper stories of battles, patrols, and the ceaseless vigilance demanded by life on the edge of empire. Perhaps most iconic among these is the site of the ancient Haikengzi fortress, now a ghostly echo of its former strength. Perched on a narrow plateau with sweeping views of the surrounding desert, it once served as a lookout and military outpost for various Chinese dynasties. Today, its walls are broken, its interior choked with sand, but its outline remains stark against the sky, a skeletal reminder of the mountain's martial legacy. Despite its harsh climate, Mount Helan is also a site of surprising vitality. Springs and microclimates within the canyons have allowed for unique ecological diversity. The area is home to the Helan shan pika, an endangered species, as well as wild peonies, medicinal herbs, and rare desert flora. Conservation efforts in recent decades have designated parts of the range as protected nature reserves, balancing ecological research with tourism and historical preservation. Culturally, Helanshan holds a special place in the hearts of the local Hui, Han, and Mongolian populations. Legends swirl around the peaks, attributing their formation to divine battles, mythical beasts, or the protective spirit of a mountain god who watches over the land. Some stories tell of lovers turned to stone, others of immortals who meditated in high caves, unseen by mortals for centuries. Taoist and Buddhist hermits are said to have once taken shelter in the remote crevices, seeking enlightenment through solitude, wind, and stone. In modern times, Mount Hilan has also become synonymous with a different kind of cultural expression: winemaking. The eastern foothills of the range have seen a boom in vineyards, with the Hilan mountain terroir now considered one of the premier wine-producing regions in China. The dry air, sharp diurnal temperature shifts, and mineral-rich soils produce wines, particularly reds, that have begun to attract international acclaim. Vineyards here stretch like a patchwork quilt beneath the mountain's shadow, their orderly rows contrasting with the wildness above. At sunset, Mount Hilan becomes a masterpiece of light and shadow. The craggy contours catch fire with orange and gold, while the desert below turns an eerie silver blue. The air cools rapidly, and the mountains begin to hum with silence. The deep, patient silence of a land that has seen civilizations rise and fall, of wind that has shaped stone into story. Stars ignite overhead, sharp and numerous in the dry desert sky, and the rock art seems to glow faintly under moonlight, like messages left behind for those who still listen. To walk in Mount Hilan is to move between worlds, between deep time and fleeting moments, between dust and divinity. It is a mountain that does not ask to be conquered, but to be understood. Every step across its ridges is a dialogue with the ancients, every gust of wind a breath from a lost epoch, every silent canyon a page from a book written in stone. Rising with quiet majesty above the central plains of China, Mount Laojianshan, stands not merely as a geographical prominence, but as a deeply revered peak woven into the very fabric of Taoist cosmology. Located in Wanchuan County, Henan Province, and nestled within the broader Funyo mountain range, Laojianshan is a mountain of myth, gold-topped temples, swirling mists, and centuries-old pilgrimage. Its name means Mount Lao Lord, a direct reference to Laozi, the semi-legendary sage credited with founding Taoism, who, according to tradition, once retreated here to meditate, write, and eventually ascend into the immortal realm. The mountain today remains a living shrine to that philosophy, its cliffs and forests echoing the spirit of Tao, the Way. As one approaches Laojianshan from the valleys below, the transformation is swift and profound. Rolling agricultural lands and quiet villages give way to thick forests and rising ridgelines. The slopes become steep, wrapped in pine and oak, veiled often in mist, especially during early morning hours when the clouds cling to the trees like silk scarves. The journey upward, whether by foot or along the more modern cableways, is not just a physical ascent, it feels like a passage through layers of reality. Every turn reveals glimpses of stone stairways carved into cliffs, secluded hermit huts, and faint echoes of wind chimes from high temple eaves. At the summit, towering over 2,200 meters above sea level, awaits one of the most surreal spectacles in all of China's sacred mountainscape, the gilded summit temples. Known as the Jinding, or Golden Summit, these twin temples shimmer atop sheer rock outcrops like palaces from a dream. Covered in gold. Plated tiles that blaze under the sun and glow ethereally under cloud or moonlight, they seem to float above the world, precariously perched yet eternal. Linked by a narrow sky bridge, the temples stand as both architectural marvels and spiritual emblems, embodying the Taoist ideal of harmony between the man-made and the natural. These summit temples are dedicated to Taishang Lao Jun, the deified form of Laozi. Inside, statues of the sage sit in serene repose, surrounded by offerings of incense, prayer slips, and the whispered invocations of pilgrims who climb the mountain seeking wisdom, peace, or divine favor. Outside, rows of bronze incense burners cast curling smoke into the mountain air, carried on winds that feel ancient, sentient. It's said that the mountaintop is where Laozi wrote the Tao Te Ching, the seminal Taoist text, and that the very rocks are imbued with the vibrations of his meditations. But Laojianshan is far more than just its summit. The entire mountain is studded with sacred sites, each with its own history and symbolism. One such place is the Yinjingguan, Silver Mirror Pass, a narrow ridge where mirrors were once said to reflect divine light. Another is Bixia Temple, a sanctuary built into the cliffside, accessed by stone paths that wrap around sheer drops. Throughout the forest trails, one finds taiji symbols, dragon-carved staircases, and prayer flags tied to ancient trees, fluttering with blessings written in calligraphy. The Taoist influence here is omnipresent, not just in the temples but in the mountain's design and spiritual layout. Taoism, with its emphasis on nature's patterns, flow, and the balance of yin and yang, finds a natural home in Laojinshan's landscape. Waterfalls tumble down mossy rocks like white threads of qi, life energy. Wind currents sweep through narrow gorges in rhythmic, breathing pulses. Pools form naturally in basins surrounded by medicinal herbs and flowers long used in Taoist alchemy. Everything feels arranged not by human hand, but by cosmic principle. Legends surround every rock and ridge. One story tells of Laozi transforming into a golden dragon and flying from the summit into the stars. Another speaks of immortals descending to the mountain to confer with him, their voices heard by shepherds as wind-borne laughter in the valleys. Footprints etched into stone are said to mark the places where he once walked. Even the mountain's flora carries mystical weight. Local apothecaries and monks still forage for rare roots and leaves, believed to have healing or longevity-enhancing properties, especially those grown in high, shaded crags where dew is pure and untouched. Culturally, Laojinshan has been a beacon for seekers for more than 2,000 years. During the Han and Tang dynasties, it was a center of spiritual learning. During the Song, many aristocrats made pilgrimages here, erecting shrines and retreats. It was also a refuge for recluses, poets, philosophers, and wandering monks who came to shed the burdens of worldly life. Even today, Taoist priests live in humble stone quarters along the mountain's paths, carrying out rituals at dawn and dusk, sweeping temple courtyards, and offering tea and stories to those who arrive with open hearts. Modern access has brought a new wave of interest to Laojinshan. Paved paths and cable cars have made the mountain more accessible to tourists, and yet, remarkably, the sense of sanctity remains intact. Visitor centers and rest stops have been built with traditional aesthetics, often camouflaged by their wooden architecture and placement amid dense trees. It is not uncommon for tourists to fall silent upon seeing the Golden Summit for the first time, not out of obligation, but from the genuine impact of the scene. The mountain still exerts its spiritual gravity, pulling each visitor into a slower rhythm, a more inward gaze. In winter, the temples glisten with frost, and the pine trees bow beneath snow, creating a dreamscape of crystalline silence. In spring, wildflowers and orchids emerge among the rocks, their blossoms trembling in the breeze like whispered revelations. Throughout the year, clouds perform their timeless dance across the ridgelines, alternately hiding and revealing the path ahead, reminding all who climb that clarity is often momentary, fleeting, and infinitely precious. At dusk, as the sun slips beneath the western hills and the final golden light ignites the summit in fire, Laojinshan becomes a silhouette of elegance and stillness. Bells ring faintly from the temple roofs. Wind stirs the red ribbons tied to prayer trees. In such moments, the mountain transcends the physical. It becomes the Tao itself, nameless, formless, and eternal. To visit Mount Laojun is not merely to hike or sightsee. It is to step into the pulse of a living tradition, to walk a mountain that breathes with spirit, and to listen, really listen, to the silence between wind gusts, where perhaps, if one is ready, the way might speak. Far to the northeast of China, in the windswept province of Liaoning, rises a mountain whose very name evokes grace and transformation, Mount Phoenix, or Fenghuangshan. Revered for centuries as a sacred Taoist site and celebrated for its strange, majestic geology, this mountain captures the imagination not only through its mythological associations but also through its natural artistry. Towering just over 800 meters at its highest point, Fenghuangshan is not a colossal peak by Chinese standards, but what it lacks in height, it more than compensates for in charisma. Here, nature, legend, and devotion converge in a spellbinding harmony that changes with each passing season. The mountain derives its name from the mythical phoenix, Fenghuang in Chinese, a celestial bird in Chinese folklore symbolizing immortality, harmony, and the union of yin and yang. Locals say that from a distance, the silhouette of the mountain resembles a phoenix at rest, its head raised toward the heavens, its wings folded in eternal grace. Others claim the name comes from a Taoist legend in which a phoenix, after witnessing centuries of human suffering, flew to the mountain and ascended to immortality in a burst of flame and light, forever sanctifying the place. Myth aside, the most striking feature of Fenghuangshan is its unique geology. Unlike the lush, green mountains of central China or the snow-draped ridges of the west, this mountain is sculpted in basalt, dark, volcanic rock that has fractured over millennia into fantastic forms. Massive basalt columns rise in vertical arrays like organ pipes along sheer cliffs. They shimmer like obsidian in the rain and glow deep orange and red when kissed by the light of sunrise and sunset. These columns, some dozens of meters high, are the product of ancient volcanic flows cooling slowly and cracking into geometric patterns, a phenomenon rare in China and globally significant in geological terms. Among the most famous of these formations is the 1,000-foot wall, Chanzucheng, a vertical cliff face where hexagonal basalt prisms form a nearly perfect tessellation of natural stone. Visitors often stand in hushed awe before it, unsure whether it's the work of nature or some forgotten god's chisel. Other formations, given names by generations of pilgrims and poets, include Dragon Scale Cliff, Phoenix Eye Rock, and Immortal Seal. Each carries a story, often rooted in Taoist or local folklore, blurring the lines between physical shape and spiritual meaning. But Mount Phoenix is not all stone and fire. Around and between its volcanic bones are deep folds of pine forest, maple groves, and wildflower meadows. In spring, cherry blossoms and rhododendrons bloom along the lower slopes, lending the mountain a softness that belies its rugged cliffs. Summer brings lush canopies, with mountain streams gurgling through shaded gullies, feeding small waterfalls that plunge over basalt ledges into clear pools. In autumn, the mountain bursts into flame, not literal, but a fiery palette of red, orange, and gold as the maples and oaks transform, creating one of northeastern China's most dazzling fall spectacles. Winter cloaks the mountain in silence and frost. Snow clings to the basalt formations, outlining their geometry with delicate precision. The result is a mountain that seems to reinvent itself with every season, offering new revelations with each return. Interwoven with this natural grandeur is a deep thread of Taoist spirituality. Mount Phoenix has long been a pilgrimage site for followers of Taoism, drawn to its quiet power and celestial symbolism. Multiple temples and shrines cling to its cliffs and rest on its ridgelines, some small and unadorned, others grand and brightly colored, painted in gold and vermilion. The most notable among them is Phoenix Temple, Fenghuang Gong, perched near the summit and facing the rising sun. Rebuilt many times over the centuries, the temple complex includes prayer halls, meditation caves, and altars dedicated to a pantheon of Taoist deities, especially Zhanwu Dodi, the dark warrior and protector of the north. Monks at Phoenix Temple live in a rhythm attuned to the mountain. They rise before dawn to sweep the stone courtyards, offer incense, and perform slow, meditative movements under the first rays of light. Rituals are performed at celestial intervals, and during special festivals, such as the birthday of Laozi or the Double Ninth Festival, the temple becomes a beacon of incense, music, and pilgrimage, with red prayer ribbons tied to trees and railings, fluttering in the wind like tiny phoenix feathers. Scattered across the mountain are other spiritual sites, meditation grottos carved into the cliffside, natural stone thrones where sages are said to have contemplated the Tao, and quiet pavilions built beside streams or under old cypress trees. The entire mountain is treated as a sacred landscape, a living text of Taoist cosmology where every element, from wind patterns to rock fissures, holds meaning. Paths wind carefully around geomantic alignments, guided by feng shui principles, and one often sees talismans etched into the stone or tucked between rocks as offerings to mountain spirits. Feng Huangshan has also been a haven for scholars, poets, and hermits throughout Chinese history. During times of dynastic collapse or war, those seeking solitude or moral retreat often found their way to its slopes. Some left behind calligraphy carved into stone or inked onto temple walls. Others simply disappeared into the folds of the mountain, their lives becoming part of its quiet legend. Even today, local lore speaks of hidden sages, old men with long beards who appear only at twilight or after storms, walking with staffs and fading like mist when approached. Modern tourism has reached Mount Phoenix, but with surprising restraint. While accessible trails and visitor facilities have been introduced, they are generally built with sensitivity to the landscape's spiritual and natural importance. Most routes still involve walking, climbing stone steps worn smooth by centuries of feet, or trekking forested paths beneath ancient trees. There are no cable cars to the summit. Those who wish to stand atop the Phoenix's head must earn the privilege through effort, breath, and a touch of humility. And once you arrive at the summit, with the golden rooftops of the temple gleaming behind you and the great sweep of Lianning's valleys unfurling below, you may feel what generations of pilgrims have felt, a lightness, a clarity, an almost electric stillness. The wind carries the scent of incense and pine. The basalt glows like coal in the fading sun. And all around, the mountain pulses with the subtle rhythm of the Tao, unseen, yet unmistakable. Mount Phoenix is not a place of loud miracles. It is a mountain of quiet transformation. A place where stone remembers the fire that made it, where trees whisper secrets from the wind, and where the phoenix, forever a symbol of rebirth, rises not in flames, but in silence and stone. Deep in the heart of central China, where three great provinces, Hubei, Anhui, and Henan, converge in a swirl of geography, culture, and ecological wonder, rises the sprawling massif of Mount Debi, or Deibishan. Unlike the jagged, snowy spires of the west or the volcanic ridges of the northeast, Deibishan does not shout its presence. Instead, it spreads like a great, slumbering dragon, rolling, forest-covered, and ancient, across hundreds of kilometers. This is not a mountain of single summits but of 1,000 folded peaks and winding ridges, forming what many call the green backbone of central China. What makes Deibishan extraordinary is not only its scale, though with its highest peak, Chantangshui, rising to over 1,700 meters, the massif does command respect, but its deep ecological richness and its cultural rootedness. This range is a biosphere in itself, a natural pharmacy, a haven of biodiversity, and a living canvas where human hands have cultivated tea, gathered herbs, and carved stone paths for millennia. Approaching Deibishan from any direction, the sense of transition is immediate. Flat farmlands and river valleys slowly give way to hills, then highlands, then densely forested ridges. The terrain becomes labyrinthine, the air thicker with humidity and the scent of pine. Mist clings to the treetops. Streams twist through valleys like veins of silver, carrying cold, mineral-rich water down to rice paddies far below. The elevation change is not sudden but subtle, a long breathing inhale of the land itself. At lower elevations, tea gardens dominate the slopes, meticulously maintained terraces where rows of vibrant green bushes curve with the contours of the mountainside. This is one of China's lesser-known but deeply revered tea-producing regions. The mountain's foggy microclimate, abundant rainfall, and rich red soils create the perfect conditions for high-quality leaves. Varieties such as Deibishan Maojian are prized for their delicate aroma, soft sweetness, and long, unfolding finish. Harvested by hand in spring, these leaves are withered in mountain air, pan-dried in small batches, and packed not just with flavor but with the character of the land itself. Further up, the tea gardens give way to forests, immense and primal. This is one of China's great green lungs, with dense canopies of fir, oak, chestnut, bamboo, and rhododendron. These forests shelter hundreds of plant species, many endemic, some medicinal. Traditional Chinese medicine practitioners have long trekked into Deibishan's interior to harvest ginseng, angelica root, lingzhi mushrooms, and rare alpine herbs used to treat everything from inflammation to respiratory disease. The forest floor is a tapestry of mosses, ferns, and flowering shrubs, alive with the calls of birds and the scamper of squirrels and foxes. This wealth of flora is matched by a remarkable array of fauna. Deibishan supports populations of macaques, wild boar, muntjacs, and in the deepest corners, even leopards and black bears. The soundscape is vibrant. Crickets, frogs, and cuckoos call at all hours, while in spring and summer, the buzzing of cicadas rises. Like a tide from the trees. This ecological richness has led to the establishment of multiple nature reserves and national forest parks, with the Deibishan National Nature Reserve at its core. These protected areas not only conserve biodiversity but also provide vital education and research platforms to study climate, evolution, and reforestation. Beyond the natural, the mountain pulses with cultural memory. Deibishan has long been a boundary and a refuge, a borderland of empires, a sanctuary for revolutionaries, and a home to ethnic diversity. In ancient times, it served as a buffer between the Chu and Wu kingdoms. During the 20th century, it became a stronghold for communist guerrillas during the Chinese Civil War, earning it the nickname Red Debi Mountains. Old bunkers, stone roads, and secret bases are still tucked away in hidden folds of the forest, slowly reclaimed by vines and moss. The human communities that live within Deibishan's shadow are as layered as the terrain itself. Villages cling to ridgelines and nestle in river valleys, their houses made of timber, stone, and mud brick. Traditional crafts still thrive here, bamboo weaving, wood carving, and herbal medicine preparation passed down through generations. Festivals celebrate both agricultural cycles and ancient myths. Local dialects blend Mandarin with old tongues, reflecting centuries of cultural mixing. One of the most spiritual places within the Debi Range is Chantangshui, translated as Heavenly Village, a scenic area at the mountain's crown that draws both pilgrims and nature lovers. Here, clouds often roll beneath the feet, revealing jagged outcroppings, deep ravines, and endless horizons of green. Stone temples sit quietly beneath towering cypresses, their courtyards filled with the scent of incense and the murmur of prayers. Wooden pavilions offer rest to climbers and hermits alike. The name Chantangshui is no exaggeration. On clear days, it feels as though the sky itself opens above, limitless and welcoming. Trails crisscross the mountain, some centuries old, carved by traders, monks, and herbalists. Hikers today can follow these same paths, winding from bamboo groves to alpine meadows, from cascading waterfalls to ancient temples hidden in thickets. The mountain is never crowded, never noisy. There are no gaudy developments, no cable cars slicing the view. The climb requires patience, but the reward is immersion, total and humbling, in a landscape that nurtures and tests the soul in equal measure. In autumn, the forests of Debi explode in color. Maples, ash, and chestnuts burn in reds and golds, the hills rippling like an ocean set aflame. Farmers gather their last tea harvests. Pilgrims offer thanks at stone shrines. The mountain seems to exhale, preparing for the long sleep of winter. Snowfall here is infrequent but transformative, turning ridges into white ridgelines that gleam in the early morning sun, painting the pine boughs with crystalline lace. More than a mountain, Debi is a living system, natural, historical, and spiritual. It is a place where rivers are born, where medicines take root, where revolutions once hid, and where silence still speaks. To walk beneath its trees is to walk in a green cathedral. To sip its tea is to drink the mountain's breath. And to climb its paths is to feel not small, but connected, to the earth, the past, and something vast and timeless that lingers in every leaf, every stone, every distant echo of wind through bamboo. In the enchanting province of Yunnan, where mountains brush the clouds and lakes shimmer like sapphire mirrors, lies one of China's most quietly surreal landscapes, Mount Weishan, or the Weishan Volcano Group. This ancient chain of extinct volcanic cones, nestled in the highlands near the historical town of Weishan and not far from the city of Dali, offers a rare glimpse into the Earth's fiery past. But here, fire has long since given way to green. What remains is not a hostile caldera but a vast, undulating terrain of sleeping volcanoes, fertile plains, mist-veiled ridges, and a timeless cultural pulse that has never quite faded. The Weishan Volcano Group stretches across the western side of Yunnan, a region already known for its dramatic geologic features, towering limestone karsts, massive gorges, and alpine lakes. Yet Weishan's volcanoes are unique. Unlike the sharp, snow-capped spires of Tibet or the jagged granite faces of the east, these volcanoes rise in gentle cones, their once fiery mouths now blanketed with forest, farmland, and wildflowers. There are over 40 volcanic structures in this group, formed during the Quaternary period, the youngest epoch of the Earth's geological history. Though extinct, their rounded forms, some perfectly symmetrical, still dominate the skyline, their silhouettes softened by time and cloaked in greenery. The most iconic of these cones is Mara Mountain, or Horse-Ear Mountain, so named because its twin peaks resemble a horse's alert ears when viewed from afar. This volcano, like many in the region, is not barren or lifeless. Instead, its slopes are covered with pine forests, dense shrubs, medicinal plants, and fields of maize and barley, tended by villagers who have cultivated this land for centuries. The soil here is dark, rich, and mineral-laden, remnants of ancient lava flows that now nourish some of the most fertile highland plots in southwest China. Walking through this terrain feels like stepping into an ancient garden built by fire and reclaimed by time. Trails weave between cones, leading to quiet viewpoints where the entire volcanic field rolls out like a rumpled green quilt. In the early morning, mists rise from the valleys, drifting across the old craters and wrapping the trees in ethereal veils. Birds dart between branches. The air is clean and cool, scented with pine resin and the subtle fragrance of mountain herbs. Few tourists come here, and those who do often find themselves alone, their footsteps the only sound on moss-lined paths. Yet what makes Mount Weishan even more surreal is what lies at its foot, the ancient town of Weishan, a former capital of the once mighty Nanzhao Kingdom. Founded more than 1,200 years ago, Weishan was the cradle of a powerful kingdom that ruled large swaths of modern Yunnan, Myanmar, and northern Vietnam. Today, the town stands preserved like a historical diorama: stone-paved streets, red lanterns swaying from eaves, old city gates intact, and ancient temples hidden behind wooden doors. It is one of the few places in China where both volcanic geology and imperial heritage coexist in such harmonious proximity. Within Weishan's old city walls, time seems to bend. The central avenue, Gongchen Street, is lined with Qing and Ming dynasty architecture, tea houses, apothecaries, and homes that have stood for centuries. Locals gather under eaves to sip tea, play mahjong, or simply watch the slow passage of the day. The Confucian Temple, built in the 14th century, remains an anchor of scholarly memory. Its stone steps are worn smooth by generations of students and monks who came to study the Analects under cypress trees. The serenity of the temple's inner courtyards is matched only by the backdrop of the volcanoes that watch silently from beyond the walls. Perhaps the most spiritually potent site is the Weibaoshan, or Mountain of Treasured Majesty, one of the 13 sacred Taoist mountains in China. Though technically not one of the volcanic cones, it lies within the Weishan Highland region and is integrally connected to its natural and spiritual landscape. Rising dramatically with layered ridges and old-growth forests, Weibaoshan is dotted with Taoist temples, grottos, and ancient shrines nestled into the stone. Some of these temples date back over a millennium, and pilgrims still climb the mountain, lighting incense, tying red ribbons to trees, and whispering wishes into the mountain wind. The area is also home to the Yi and Bai ethnic minorities, whose cultures lend the landscape an additional layer of depth. The Bai, in particular, have developed a rich agricultural and spiritual relationship with the volcanoes. Folklore speaks of the mountains as sleeping dragons, powerful spirits who, long ago, raged with fire and thunder but were tamed by the wisdom of mountain sages. These stories are told through songs, embroidery, and ceremonial dances, often performed during seasonal festivals when communities gather to honor the land. In summer, the volcanic fields erupt in color, not with lava, but with wildflowers and blooming crops. Fields of rapeseed, buckwheat, and sunflowers stretch across the lower slopes, while higher elevations become covered with violet orchids and scarlet rhododendrons. Bees hum, farmers harvest with curved knives, and children run through the rows laughing. At sunset, the volcanoes cast long shadows across the valley floor, their rounded summits glowing softly under the golden sky. Despite its relative obscurity in travel guides, the Weishan Volcano Group has been slowly gaining attention from geologists, ecologists, and those seeking quieter, less-traveled paths. In recent years, conservation efforts have aimed to preserve both the volcanic formations and the cultural heritage of the surrounding region. Ecotourism initiatives have encouraged sustainable travel, offering guided hikes, cultural immersion stays with local families, and traditional herbal medicine workshops using plants found on the volcanic slopes. In winter, the landscape transforms again. Frost laces the upper ridges. Morning fog thickens into silver veils. The old town's rooftops wear a dusting of white, while the black basalt of the ancient craters glistens in the sun like coal. It is a quiet time, a time for reflection, when the bones of the earth feel close, and the fires of the past seem to glow faintly beneath the soil. Mount Weishan and its surrounding volcanoes are not just geological remnants, they are living monuments to change, resilience, and rebirth. Here, mountains that once spewed destruction now cradle life in every fold. Temples rise from the ashes of ancient kingdoms. Towns built in the shadow of fire become havens of peace. And the land, shaped by both time and humanity, continues to breathe in silence, waiting for those who are patient enough to listen. Perched along the southern rim of Guangdong Province, where the land meets the ever-changing rhythms of the South China Sea, Mount Depeng, Darpingshan, rises not as a solitary giant, but as a windswept sentinel of history, sea, and stone. This coastal granite mountain, located in the eastern part of Shenzhen, is a place where tropical greenery clings to towering sea cliffs, where centuries-old forts still gaze seaward across shimmering bays, and where the pulse of nature and memory collide in one of southern China's most atmospheric and underrated landscapes. Mount Depeng's charm lies in the seamless blending of elements: ocean, mountain, jungle, and human heritage. Unlike the jagged inland ranges that dominate much of China's mountainous terrain, Dopeng is a coastal massif, its flanks descending dramatically into turquoise coves and rocky peninsulas. Its very name, Dopeng, comes from Chinese mythology. The Dopeng bird, a colossal, divine creature often likened to a rock or phoenix, symbolizing strength, freedom, and transformation. It's a fitting metaphor for this mountain, which has long stood at the crossroads of trade, warfare, culture, and natural evolution. Geologically, Dapengshan is a mountain of granite, weathered, sun-bleached, and resolute. The slopes are carved with ancient grooves, cracked and smoothed by relentless sea winds, summer monsoons, and the salt of centuries. Massive stone outcroppings rise from jungled ridges like ancient altars, some eroded into fantastic shapes resembling turtles, lions, and fish. The cliffs on its seaward side are among the most visually dramatic in all of Guangdong, sheer, craggy faces that plunge straight into the surf, where waves batter the base with thunderous regularity and seabirds will endlessly overhead. Draping this ancient stone skeleton is a surprising wealth of greenery. Despite its marine exposure, Dapengshan supports dense subtropical vegetation. Banyan trees twist their roots into crevices. Clusters of palm and bamboo rise beside mossy boulders. Orchids and ferns flourish in shaded gullies. During the monsoon season, the slopes seem to shimmer with life, the entire mountain humming with the sound of insects, birds, and wind-rattled leaves. Butterflies the size of a hand flit between flowers, while tree frogs chirp unseen in the undergrowth. It's a paradox, a mountain of hard stone, soft with life. Woven into this natural splendor is a profound layer of human history. Mount Dopeng stands over Dopeng Fortress, one of the best-preserved coastal forts in all of China. Built in the late 14th century during the early Ming dynasty, the fortress was a key military installation designed to protect the coast from Japanese pirates, wokou, and later from British gunboats during the Opium Wars. Even today, its weathered stone walls, arched gates, and watchtowers exude a stoic defiance. The ramparts still face the sea, as if waiting for enemies that no longer come, and cannons rest on their mounts like relics of a time when China's shores were battlegrounds. The fortress town that surrounds it remains alive, a living museum of cobbled alleys, tiled roofs, ancestral halls, and temples dedicated to sea gods, generals, and local heroes. Shrines to Mazu, the goddess of the sea, are particularly prominent, as are statues of General Lion Ju, a Ming-era commander who famously defended this very coast. Locals still live within the fort's perimeter, many of them descended from soldiers and fishermen who have called Dopeng home for generations. Red lanterns hang from doorways. Incense drifts from courtyards. The air is thick with stories. Beyond the walls of the fortress, a network of ancient footpaths snakes up Mount Dopeng itself. Hikers can follow these stone and dirt trails up through lush hillsides, past hidden pagodas and viewpoints, all the way to rocky outcrops where the sea sprawls out beneath in endless shades of blue and silver. Along the way, one may encounter Buddhist temples quietly tucked into the forest, some adorned with vibrant murals and intricate carvings of dragons, waves, and immortals. These temples, built in seclusion, are often visited by fishermen before long journeys, their altars heavy with offerings of fruit and incense. The views from the upper reaches of Dapengshan are unforgettable. To the east lies Daya Bay, a glittering expanse of sheltered ocean dotted with fishing boats and floating oyster farms. To the south, the coastline jaggedly unfurls toward Hong Kong, its islands and peaks visible on clear days. Inland, the sprawl of Shenzhen glimmers like a glass and steel mirage, a reminder of how this once remote promontory now stands at the edge of one of the world's most advanced urban megaregions. Yet on the mountain, everything feels distant, muted by wind and time. Nature thrives in this liminal space. The marine ecosystems just off Dopeng's shores are among the most vibrant on the Chinese mainland. Coral reefs, sea grass beds, and mangrove forests provide breeding grounds for countless species. In recent years, conservation efforts have sought to protect this fragile biodiversity, and Dopeng Peninsula has been at the forefront of marine preservation initiatives, including ecotourism, reef restoration, and environmental education. Sunrise and sunset transform Mount Dopeng into a stage of shifting color. At dawn, the eastern sky bursts into flame, casting the granite cliffs in gold and orange, illuminating the sleeping fishing villages and quiet forests. At dusk, The sea turns liquid silver as the sun drops behind the western ridgelines, and lanterns begin to glow in the old fortress town below. The mountain sighs under cool breezes, and the scent of salt, moss, and burning incense fills the air. Despite its beauty and historical depth, Darpengshan remains less known to the wider world, overshadowed by the rapid urbanization of nearby Shenzhen. Yet it is precisely this sense of retreat, of hidden legacy, that makes the mountains so unforgettable. Here, one can stand on the same battlements where soldiers once scanned the horizon for sails, walk the same jungle paths trodden by monks and villagers for centuries, and listen to the same waves that have broken against the stone for thousands of years. Mount Dopeng is not just a geographic feature. It is a guardian of memory, of sea, of spirit. A place where every stone whispers of tides long past, where history and nature are not separate, but entwined like roots in granite. And in a land where the future rushes forward with relentless speed, Darpengshan reminds us of the enduring power of stillness, of watchfulness, and of holding one's ground. Tucked into the lesser-known folds of Beijing's storied western hills, Mount Qinglongshan, or Green Dragon Mountain, rises quietly, away from the thrum of the capital's ancient palaces and modern towers. Modest in height yet deep in presence, it is a place where the urban edge dissolves into silence, where time bends under the canopy of old trees, and where temples perch like whispers on the mountain's shoulders. This mountain does not announce itself with grandeur. It invites. And for those who accept, Qinglongshan offers a rare fusion of sacred architecture, imperial history, and soul-stirring panoramas that reach across the past and present of China's beating heart. Qinglongshan is one of the foothills of the Taihang mountain range, part of the Western Hills, Shishan, that cradle the western outskirts of Beijing like a protective ark. These hills have long served as spiritual and strategic guardians of the city, home to temples, imperial tombs, Taoist retreats, and military fortresses. Qinglongshan in particular has earned a quiet reverence through the centuries as both a place of retreat and transcendence, especially within the Confucian, Taoist, and Buddhist traditions that have shaped so much of northern China's intellectual and spiritual landscape. The name Green Dragon is no accident. In Chinese cosmology, the Qinglong is one of the four symbols, Sai Xiong, guardian beasts of the cardinal directions. The green dragon represents the east, associated with spring, growth, and renewal. Even though Qinglongshan sits on the western edge of Beijing, the name captures the mountain's ancient association with vitality and divine presence. Locals once believed a green dragon spirit dwelled here, curling around the slopes in mist and wind, blessing the land with fertility and watchfulness. Today, Qinglongshan remains wrapped in greenery for much of the year. Pines and cypresses line the trails, their roots gripping granite ledges like old fingers. Ginkgos and wild cherries offer flashes of gold and pink in spring and autumn. Moss carpets the shaded stone steps, while birdsong echoes through gullies and over ridgelines. In summer, the air is cooler than the city below, fragrant with earth and flowering herbs. In winter, frost traces delicate patterns on temple tiles, and snow softens the contours of ancient rooftops. This seasonal rhythm has long drawn those seeking contemplation and clarity. Climbing the mountain is a gradual journey, neither daunting nor easy, but meditative. Old stone stairways zigzag up its face, passing by outcrops, viewpoints, and shrines. The mountain is dotted with religious architecture, each with its own story, most dating back hundreds of years. These are not the grand imperial temples of central Beijing, but rather intimate sanctuaries, often cloaked in quiet, their wooden beams weathered by time and incense. Among the most notable is Qinglong Temple, nestled midway up the mountain. It was once a major monastic complex during the Tang and Liao dynasties and remains a site of reverence for Zen practitioners. Though partially ruined, what remains is hauntingly beautiful. Carved stone archways, worn Buddha statues, and walls where faded frescoes still whisper stories of pilgrimage and prayer. Monks still tend to the temple, maintaining the old gardens, sweeping the stone courtyards, and welcoming visitors who climb not for spectacle, but for stillness. Further up lies a Taoist sanctuary, known as Zhenwu Hall, dedicated to the Northern Emperor, a deity of water and protection often linked to high mountains and deep valleys. The hall is modest in size, but radiant in spirit. Bells hang from the eaves, chiming softly in the breeze. The scent of sandalwood lingers. Worshippers light incense and bow toward the altar, seeking protection or perhaps a moment of peace in a world that never seems to slow. One of Qinglongshan's great gifts is its view. From the upper platforms and ridgelines, especially on clear days, the sprawl of Beijing unfurls like a tapestry to the east. You can see the Forbidden City's rooftops shimmering in the distance, the orderly web of avenues and hutongs stretching outward, and the skyline of glass towers rising beyond the second and third ring roads. Yet from the mountaintop, the city feels less like a chaos of noise and ambition, and more like a living organism. Pulsing, expansive, but dwarfed by the mountains that have watched over it for millennia. The mountain has also played quiet roles in political and cultural life. In dynastic times, scholars and officials often came here to retreat from the pressures of court life, whether to escape scandal, compose poetry, or meditate on mortality. There are hidden pavilions and carved tablets bearing calligraphy from Ming and Qing literati, as well as stone benches where it is said emperors and monks once sat in silent contemplation. Some believe the mountain's strategic position even allowed it to serve as a lookout during the Mongol invasions and later during the tumultuous fall of the Qing. Despite its proximity to modern urban sprawl, Qinglongshan remains surprisingly untouched. It is often bypassed by mainstream tourism in favor of the more famous Fragrant Hills, or the Summer Palace. As a result, its trails remain peaceful, its temples uncrowded, its spirit intact. For locals, it is a mountain of habit and reverence, an early morning climb, a place to perform Tai Chi at dawn, a site to make offerings during the Qingming festival, or a place to bring children and grandparents on weekend walks. In recent years, the Beijing government has made efforts to preserve the ecological and cultural integrity of Qinglongshan. Restoration work has been carefully done on temples and stairways, and forest conservation projects aim to protect the biodiversity of its slopes. Wild boar, pheasants, foxes, and dozens of bird species still call the mountain home, while ancient medicinal herbs like dangui and huangqin continue to grow in its shaded groves. As twilight descends, Qinglongshan becomes something almost otherworldly. The temples fall into shadow, lanterns glow softly in doorways, and the city lights below flicker to life like a galaxy being born. The wind picks up, stirring the leaves. The silhouette of the mountain darkens against the sky, like the spine of a dragon curled in slumber. Mount Qinglong is not a monument of spectacle. It is a mountain of atmosphere, reflection, and connection. A place where one can stand between heaven and city, past and present, solitude and society. A place where the dragon still sleeps, breathing through the trees and stones, offering quiet strength to those who climb in search of something deeper than just a view. On the rugged eastern coast of Zhejiang province, where the land meets the sea in a restless dialogue of mist, wind, and tide, rises a mountain cloaked in fog and myth, Mount Taiju, or Taizhushan. Though not towering in height, this coastal massif breathes an atmosphere so ethereal that it feels suspended between the material and the spiritual. Here, hills rise and vanish into drifting clouds, sea breezes rustle through bamboo groves, and the scent of tea and incense wafts through hidden temple courtyards and ancient caves carved into the cliffs. It is a mountain of veils, of fog, of silence, of spiritual depth, quietly bearing witness to centuries of devotion, reflection, and life lived close to the earth and sea. Mount Taiju lies near the city of Taiju itself, close to the coastline of eastern Zhejiang, a region historically known for its seafaring culture, coastal trade, and deep Buddhist roots. The mountain's proximity to the East China Sea gives it a unique character. Unlike the granite giants of inland China, Taizhushan is shaped as much by ocean weather as by tectonic uplift. Rain here is frequent, the sky is ever-changing. In the early morning, dense clouds gather low, curling into the gullies and drifting over tea terraces like rolling waves. As the sun rises, the fog lifts in slow ribbons, revealing green slopes, craggy ridgelines, and stone temples perched on outcrops like quiet sentinels. The landscape of Mount Taiju is remarkably lush and textured. Its lower slopes are draped in dense forests, pines, cypresses, camphor trees, and thickets of bamboo, often soaked in dew and alive with birdsong. Higher up, these forests give way to open groves and tea plantations that follow the contours of the land in undulating waves. These plantations are not industrial monocultures, but ancient, family-tended terraces passed down through generations, where small leaf varieties are grown in harmony with the mountain's rhythm. The humid, maritime air and mineral-rich soil lend the local teas, especially Taiju Maojian, a distinctive freshness, with notes of sea mist, herbs, and wildflowers. During springtime, villagers in wide-brimmed hats move gracefully along the rows, hand-picking the new leaves and collecting them in woven baskets. But Mount Taiju is not only a mountain of nature, it is a mountain of faith. Buddhism has flourished here since the Tang dynasty, and its slopes are marked with temples, monasteries, and, perhaps most hauntingly, caves carved by monks over a millennium ago. These caves, hollowed out of the mountain's cliffs, were once austere meditation chambers, places of solitude and asceticism where monks would spend weeks, months, even years in silence. Some contain statues of seated Buddhas, others only simple stone platforms for seated meditation, their walls still blackened by centuries-old oil lamps. A few are now open to the public, their entrances marked by red prayer ribbons and faded calligraphy etched into the rock. One of the most significant of these sites is Xiangshan Temple, a mountain temple built during the Northern Song period and still functioning today. The temple complex spreads across several terraces, with golden-roofed prayer halls, weathered stone staircases, and gardens of lotus and peonies. Tall pagodas rise from the mist, and ancient bell towers chime softly through the fog. Monks walk slowly through the courtyards, their robes trailing along mossy stones, their chants blending with the sound of wind and rustling bamboo. Visitors come not in crowds, but in quiet twos and threes, seeking something more enduring than scenery, a trace of serenity, a moment of inward clarity. Throughout the year, Mount Taiju hosts festivals tied to the lunar calendar, particularly the celebration of Guanin's birthday, the Bodhisattva of compassion. During these days, the mountain comes alive with ritual. Incense thickens the air, lanterns float down mountain streams, and monks lead processions through candlelit halls. Yet even then, there's a hushed reverence to it all. Pilgrims climb barefoot in the early dark, some carrying offerings of tea and fruit, others tying red silk prayers to the branches of ancient trees. It's not about spectacle, it's about remembrance, continuity, devotion. Legends abound on this mountain. Locals speak of sages who vanished into the fog, of immortals who once brewed elixirs from rare mountain herbs, and of dragons that dwell in the mists, protecting the sacred springs. These tales aren't told with disbelief. Rather, they are part of the landscape itself, woven into the culture and passed from elder to child like a family recipe. And perhaps, standing at the edge of a stone outcrop, watching clouds coil around the forest below and the sea stretch into infinity, the stories don't seem so far-fetched. Paths across the mountain vary from well-kept stone staircases to rough forest trails. Hikers pass old pavilions, places of rest, poetry, and panoramic gazing. On clear days, the view from the upper ridges is astonishing. To one side, the land rolls out in wooded hills and tea fields. To the other, the East China Sea shimmers in the distance, dotted with fishing boats and windswept islands. The breeze carries the scent of salt, earth, and distant blossoms. Eagles ride the thermals. Bamboo creaks gently in the wind. Modern development has begun to encroach on some parts of the region, but the mountain itself remains remarkably preserved, thanks in part to local reverence and deliberate conservation efforts. Several areas have been designated as protected cultural and ecological zones. Initiatives by regional governments and religious communities aim to maintain the harmony of the mountain's dual identity, natural and spiritual. Ecotourism is encouraged, but regulated. Large buses and cable cars are absent. The mountain still insists that visitors walk, breathe, climb, and listen. In the evenings, the mist often returns, climbing the slopes like a tide. Lights from the temples flicker through the fog, soft and golden, like fireflies among trees. The chants of evening prayers echo faintly across the valleys. The tea fields grow quiet. The mountain exhales, as if settling into sleep, its granite bones warmed by centuries of incense and devotion. Mount Taiju is not a peak to be conquered, but a presence to be encountered. It does not boast or beckon. It waits. It enfolds. It reminds. And for those who walk its paths with quiet hearts and open senses, it offers something more enduring than scenery, an invitation into stillness, an understanding of impermanence, and a glimpse of the infinite hidden in fog, stone, leaf, and silence. In the northeastern reaches of Fujian province, where the land seems to rise and twist like an ancient scroll being slowly unfurled, lies one of China's most surreal and breathtaking geological spectacles, Mount Tainingshan. Part of the globally significant Danxia landform system, Taining stands not merely as a mountain but as a world sculpted from red stone, where colossal cliffs glow crimson in the sun, Temples cling impossibly to vertical walls, and narrow forested paths vanish into mossy ravines, echoing with the murmur of wind and water. Here, nature and devotion seem to share the same brushstroke, bold, precise, and timeless. The Danxia formations are unique to China, named after Mount Danxia in Guangdong, and characterized by steep red sandstone cliffs, striking rock columns, deep gorges, and isolated mesas, all formed by millions of years of uplift and erosion. But Mount Taining's version of Danxia is among the most spellbinding, due to its dramatic scale, rare biodiversity, and seamless interweaving of ancient religious sites within the very bones of the land. As one approaches the Taining region, the first impression is one of harmony, jagged and smooth, wild and sacred, stone and silence. The landscape bursts forth with towering red walls that rise hundreds of meters above the valley floors. These cliffs are not barren, they are alive with waterfalls, vines, and the rhythmic flutter of birds. The red rock, streaked with darker mineral veins, shifts color throughout the day, from deep maroon in the morning mist to fiery gold beneath the noonday sun, and finally to purple and rust under the fading twilight. Cradled within these formations are some of China's most astonishing temples, not freestanding buildings, but sanctuaries carved into the very face of the rock. The most iconic of these is Shangqing Temple, a Taoist sanctuary dramatically nestled into a sheer cliff, its wooden eaves jutting from the rock like wings in flight. Built during the Song dynasty and expanded in later centuries, Shangqing appears to defy gravity. Reaching it requires ascending a narrow, ancient stairway cut into the rock, passing by meditation caves, incense burners, and guardian statues placed in niches carved by monks long ago. The climb is steep and quiet. Every turn reveals a new angle of sky and cliff, a new interplay of light and shadow. Inside the temple, the silence is profound. Stone walls glow warm with filtered light. The altar flickers with red candles and coils of incense. Statues of Laozi and celestial Taoist deities watch with serene expressions. Pilgrims tie red ribbons to the railings outside, letting their prayers dance in the wind hundreds of meters above the forest floor. Here, between sky and earth, belief feels less like a concept and more like gravity itself, something weightless, yet undeniable. Yet Mount Taining's wonders extend far beyond its temples. The entire region is laced with a network of hiking paths that wind through deep ravines, shaded gorges, and lush valleys. The terrain here is a sensory experience. One moment, you're walking along a ridge with panoramic views of layered red stone and misty forest stretching to the horizon. The next, you're deep within a narrow chasm where only a sliver of light filters down between walls so close you can touch both sides with outstretched arms. One of the most famous of these passages is the Zhaixia Grand Canyon, a masterpiece of water and time. This gorge is a labyrinth of weathered rock corridors, waterfalls, underground springs, and hanging gardens. It takes hours to navigate, and along the way, travelers encounter natural rock bridges, caves once used by hermits and outlaws, and cliffs where rare orchids bloom from impossibly small crevices. The walls are etched with ancient inscriptions, prayers, poetry, and Taoist symbols carved by hands now long vanished. Taining's forests are a sanctuary in themselves. The combination of Danxia terrain and subtropical climate creates a unique ecological niche, home to hundreds of plant and animal species, including some found nowhere else on Earth. The forests echo with the songs of thrushes and cuckoos, the rustle of deer and civets, and in some quiet corners, the croak of frogs from emerald pools hidden deep in the woods. Towering firs, camphor trees, and clusters of bamboo rise beside waterfalls, while moss and ferns blanket every available surface. During the spring and summer, wildflowers add bursts of color to the red and green palette. Magnolias, azaleas, and rare medicinal herbs sought by local herbalists. Cultural heritage is also deeply embedded into the mountain's soil. The nearby Taining ancient town serves as a historical gateway to the region, a well-preserved settlement from the Ming and Qing dynasties. Stone bridges arch over canals, black-tiled rooftops tilt over wooden courtyards, and narrow alleys echo with footsteps and the quiet chatter of families that have lived here for generations. From the town, pilgrims and travelers begin their journeys into the mountains, stopping at local tea shops, folk medicine stalls, or calligraphy studios before setting off into the heights. It's no surprise that UNESCO designated Taining's Danxia landforms as part of the global Danxia World Heritage Site. The region is one of the most representative of the landform's striking beauty, ecological integrity, and cultural significance. Yet, compared to other more tourist-heavy destinations, Taningshan remains peaceful, perhaps protected by its remote geography, or perhaps by the reverence it inspires in all who step beneath its crimson cliffs. As night falls on Mount Taining, the transformation is profound. The red stone takes on a deep, almost velvety hue. Crickets and cicadas begin their song, and the scent of damp earth and pine deepens. Monks at cliffside temples light lamps that flicker against the rock like stars scattered across the mountain face. Mist gathers once more in the valleys, rising like memory itself from the roots of the land. Mount Taining is a place where verticality becomes sacred, where cliffs become cathedrals, gorges become passages of introspection, and temples are not built on the land, but of it. To walk its paths is to move through a living, breathing scroll of geology, faith, and timelessness. And whether one comes to marvel at its beauty, seek spiritual clarity, or simply walk in silence beneath the red walls of history, Taningshan never fails to leave an imprint, deep, quiet, and indelible. Deep in the heart of Yunnan, where southern China's rugged highlands dissolve into the tropical realms of Southeast Asia, stretches one of the most ecologically rich and enchantingly untamed mountain ranges in the entire nation, Mount Alau, or Alatian. Cloaked in mist and dense rainforest, its ridgelines stretch like the spine of a sleeping dragon across hundreds of kilometers, rising and falling in rhythm with the clouds, rivers, and ancestral breath of the earth. Here, the mountains do not merely exist as geological features, they pulse with life. Each fold and forested valley is a cathedral of biodiversity, a sanctuary for species unseen elsewhere, and a living mosaic of ethnic culture, ancient wisdom, and ecological memory. Mount Alau runs through central and southern Yunnan, forming a crucial part of the Hengduan mountain system. It serves as a natural barrier between the Yunnan-Guizhou Plateau and the subtropical lowlands further south. This positioning at the ecological crossroads of temperate East Asia and tropical Indochina has made the Alatian Range one of China's last and greatest biological frontiers. The terrain is at once dramatic and intimate. Sharp ridgelines plunge into mist. Shrouded valleys. Slopes are covered in layers upon layers of forest. Bamboo groves, giant tree ferns, dense clusters of orchids, and towering evergreens that have never known the axe. The air here is heavy with moisture and filled with the constant hum of insects, birds, and the rustle of creatures moving unseen through the undergrowth. Clouds often nestle against the mountaintops like resting spirits, and the frequent rain nourishes a verdant landscape so dense and alive that it seems to breathe on its own. Biologically, Mount Alau is a wonderland. It is home to the Alatian National Nature Reserve, a sprawling protected area that encompasses over 500 square kilometers of virgin forest. This reserve is one of the most important biodiversity hotspots in all of China and is renowned for its concentration of rare and endemic species. The flora alone is staggering, over 4,000 species of vascular plants, many of which are found nowhere else. Towering hardwoods share the canopy with tree ferns and subtropical palms. Moss and lichen coat everything in soft green textures, while rhododendrons bloom in explosions of red and white along the higher slopes during spring. But it is the fauna that truly elevates Alatian to mythical status. The forest is a haven for rare birds, some so elusive they've become the stuff of legend. The Yunnan parrotbill, the black-breasted leaf turtle, and the vibrant Mrs. Hume's pheasant inhabit this region. The calls of hornbills echo through the valleys, and sunbirds with iridescent plumage dart among the blossoms. The green peafowl, once common across Southeast Asia, now finds some of its last strongholds here in these misty woods. Among mammals, Alatian shelters populations of the Yunnan snub-nosed monkey, a striking and endangered primate known for its pale blue face and shaggy fur, adapted to the cold, high forests. Clouded leopards and Asiatic black bears still roam its more remote areas. In the undergrowth, civets, muntjacs, pangolins, and flying squirrels carry on their ancient dramas, hidden from view but integral to the ecological balance. Every square meter of the forest feels sacred, not in the way of temples and scriptures, but in the raw, unfiltered presence of undisturbed life. Despite its ecological fame, Alatian is not well known to tourists, partly because of its remoteness, and partly because it has long been protected and respected by local communities who understand its spiritual and environmental value. The region is home to several ethnic minority groups, including the Yi, Hani, and Lahu peoples, whose histories are entwined with the mountains themselves. These cultures bring with them oral traditions, music, dress, and agricultural systems that reflect a deep relationship with the land. For the Han people, Alashan is sacred. They view the mountain as a living ancestor, benevolent, powerful, and in need of respect. Their terraced rice fields, built along the lower slopes of Alashan, are among the most beautiful and intricate in the world. These fields, now UNESCO listed, are more than agricultural systems. They are living artworks shaped by centuries of environmental harmony. The Han also maintain holy forests, groves untouched by human hands, where spirits are believed to reside. These patches of pristine forest have, by custom and faith, remained uncut and undisturbed for hundreds of years, contributing to the region's incredible biodiversity. Walking through Alashan is to journey through layers of sound and color. The air is rich with the scent of wet leaves, wild ginger, and orchids. Waterfalls plunge down moss-covered cliffs into clear pools where dragonflies hover. Fog curls through the canopy, wrapping trees in mystery. Paths made of knotted roots and stone lead to high ridges where, on clear days, you can see the quilted hills rolling away into the horizon. Every turn seems to unveil a new microworld, fungi glowing faintly in the dim light, vines as thick as a man's arm dangling from impossible heights, birds flitting through shafts of sun that pierce the trees like golden arrows. Though the mountain's silence feels ancient, it is not without the whisper of change. Alashan has faced increasing pressure from deforestation, illegal poaching, and unsustainable farming over the years. However, intense conservation efforts led by both the Chinese government and international ecological bodies have helped push back the tide. The Alashan National Nature Reserve is now one of the most rigorously protected in China, with ongoing biodiversity research, reforestation projects, and collaboration with local communities to ensure that traditional practices align with modern conservation goals. A particularly fascinating element of Alashan's modern role is its importance to climate science. The mountain is home to one of China's most advanced carbon flux monitoring stations, a research center that studies how much carbon is absorbed or released by forest ecosystems. Data from Alashan helps scientists understand how mountain rainforests like these can play a crucial role in mitigating climate change. The forest here is not only a sanctuary for wildlife and culture, it is a vital lung for the planet. At night, Alashan returns to its most primal state. The mountain becomes a world of shadows and murmurs. The canopy turns black against the starlit sky, and the sounds shift from birds to frogs, from wind to the occasional roar or rustle deeper in the forest. The moon hangs low, casting silver light across dew-soaked leaves. In the distance, fires flicker from small mountain villages, where elders sit around hot stones and recount stories of sky gods, forest spirits, and the mountains that always watch, always provide. Mount Alau is not the China of tourist brochures. It is the China of depth, of breadth, balance, and unbroken continuity. It is a mountain that lives, not as a backdrop, but as a presence. A place where evolution dances unhurried, where tradition whispers through the trees, and where the line between the human and the wild is not a boundary, but a bridge. In the heart of Shaanxi province, where dynasties once rose and fell beneath the wide sky of the Wei River Valley, there rises a mountain woven deeply into the political, romantic, and spiritual tapestry of ancient China, Mount Lishan, or Lishan. Located just east of Lebanon and adjacent to the world-famous Terracotta Army and the ruins of the Qin imperial capital, Mount Lishan is not only a beautiful natural formation but also a stage upon which emperors bathed, lovers whispered, soldiers marched, and revolutions ignited. Today, its slopes form the core of Lishan National Forest Park, an emerald realm of pine, cypress, and cherry trees, with trails that wind past temples, scenic terraces, ancient stone pavilions, and hot springs that still bubble from the same earth that once soothed the feet of Tang emperors. Lishan is not a tall mountain by Chinese standards. Its main peak rises to about 1,300 meters, but its presence is striking. It stretches along the southern edge of the Guangzhou Plain, rising in elegant, undulating ridges that seem to cradle the ancient city of Lebanon. Its name, Li, evokes the image of a black horse, and the silhouette of its peaks, especially at sunset, does indeed resemble a resting steed gazing toward the west. This visual poetry is fitting, because for over 3,000 years, Lishan has been a mountain of myth and empire, inspiration and intimacy. The mountain's most iconic landmark is undoubtedly the Huaqing Palace, a legendary complex of palaces, pavilions, and hot springs nestled into Lishan's northern foothills. The Huaqing Palace has existed in various forms since the Western Zhou dynasty, but it reached its zenith during the Tang dynasty, when Emperor Xuanzong turned it into a lavish imperial retreat. Surrounded by verdant slopes and fed by naturally flowing geothermal springs, the palace became the site of one of Chinese history's most enduring love stories, that of Emperor Xuanzong and his beloved consort Yang Guifei. The story is romantic and tragic. Yang Guifei, famed for her beauty and grace, captivated the emperor's heart and became the favored concubine in a court filled with intrigue. Their days at Huaqing Palace were filled with music, poetry, and moonlit bathing in the steamy hot springs. It was here that the emperor had special bathing pools built for her, including the now famous Yang Guifei pool, a delicate stone basin surrounded by weeping willows and flowering shrubs. The scent of plum blossoms still lingers in the air during spring, and it is easy to imagine the rustle of silk and the laughter of court musicians echoing through the terraces. Yet this romance unfolded against the backdrop of national unrest. The extravagance of the Tang court, symbolized by the opulence of Huaqing, became a point of contention, and the Lushan rebellion eventually swept across the empire. In a moment of political and emotional devastation, Emperor Xuanzong was forced to flee Lebanon, and Yang Guifei was compelled to take her own life during the retreat. Her death became a symbol of love lost to the tides of history, and Mount Lishan, with its thermal springs and silent trees, became a vessel for the sorrow and beauty of their story. Visitors today can still walk the ruins and reconstructed halls of the Huaqing Palace complex, with its classical gardens, steaming spring pools, and elegant Tang-style architecture. Statues of Yang Guifei capture her grace and melancholy, while murals and performance spaces retell the legend through music, shadow play, and traditional dance. The hot springs, long revered for their healing properties, remain active, offering warm, mineral-rich waters that have drawn emperors, monks, and travelers for centuries. Yet the mountain is more than just a romantic relic. As one ascends Lishan's wooded slopes, the mood shifts from courtly opulence to sacred stillness. Temples and pavilions dot the forested ridgelines, often half-shrouded in mist. One of the most revered is Laomu Temple, dedicated to the Queen Mother of the West, a Taoist goddess associated with immortality, mountains, and celestial wisdom. The temple, perched at a high elevation, offers panoramic views of the Wei River plain and the ancient capital spread out like a map below. Pilgrims still climb to offer incense and prayers, seeking blessings of health, fertility, and protection. Farther along the mountain trail lies the Beacon Tower, a lone stone structure with a commanding view over the valley. It once served as a signal post in the vast warning system that connected outposts from the Great Wall all the way to the imperial heartland. It also plays a key role in one of China's darker tales, the story of King Yu of Zhou and his tragic misuse of the beacon fires to amuse his concubine Bao Sai. As the story goes, the king repeatedly lit the tower's fires to fake enemy attacks, simply to see his court scramble, much to Bao Sai's delight. When real invaders came, the allies no longer responded, and the kingdom fell. Thus, the Beacon Tower became both a military relic and a moral lesson engraved in stone. Nature, too, is a constant presence on Mount Lishan. The park is home to a diverse ecosystem, home to more than 800 species of plants and dozens of bird and insect species. In spring, cherry blossoms turn the trails into floating rivers of pink. In summer, cicadas fill the air with their rhythmic chants. In autumn, the mountain glows in hues of amber and gold as the leaves of oaks and maples begin to turn. Winters are quiet and severe, with frost blanketing the pines and snow outlining the mountain's sharp ridgelines. The silence is profound, broken only by the wind and the occasional call of a hawk circling overhead. A cable car now runs partway up the mountain for those unable to hike, but many choose to ascend on foot, following the ancient path of the emperors, a steep, winding stairway that echoes with history. Along the way, stone steles inscribed with Tang poetry and imperial edicts stand beneath moss-covered trees. Each corner turned reveals a new viewpoint, a new piece of memory. Looking out from the upper terraces, one can see not only the nearby Huaqing Palace and the fields of Lintong district, but also, in the far hazy distance, the tomb mound of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, and with it, the silent armies of terracotta warriors still standing in underground formation, guarding the edge of the earth. At dusk, the mountain takes on a quiet majesty. The last light turns the stone pavilions orange, the steam from the springs rising like ghosts through the trees. Lanterns flicker to life in temple windows, and monks strike their wooden blocks to signal the arrival of evening prayers. The same warm water that once bathed emperors continues to flow over stone and soil, as it has for countless years, whispering its secrets through every steaming breath. Mount Lieshan is not just a mountain, it is a storyteller. It has watched dynasties rise and crumble, witnessed love burn bright and fade into legend, seen ambition soar and fail. It holds in its slopes the heat of the earth, the stillness of temples, the laughter of lovers, and the cries of armies long gone. To climb Lieshan is to walk not only through a forested park, but through a living chapter of China's soul. Far from the crowded paths of mainstream tourism, hidden deep within the green labyrinth of Guizhou's misty interior, lie the remote and largely untamed ridges of the Mount Fanjing sub-peaks, an extension of the awe-inspiring Fanjingshan, China's sacred Buddhist mountain and one of the most biodiverse places on Earth. While the main summit of Fanjing has garnered growing global recognition for its surreal rock formations and dramatic sky temples, it is in these lesser-known sub-peaks, the peripheral ridgelines, knife-edged trails, shadowed forests, and cloud-draped saddles, that the mountain's most haunting mysteries and wildest beauty still reside. The sub-peaks of Mount Fanjing, collectively forming a massive ecological network, radiate like ribs from the mountain's sacred heart. Though not as vertically imposing as the famed Red Cloud Golden Summit or the Mushroom Stone Pinnacle, these outlying ridges offer something just as rare: untouched serenity, profound biodiversity, and a raw spiritual energy that lingers in the cold morning mist and whispering pine groves. Unlike the more manicured sections of Fanjingshan that have recently seen the addition of cable cars and stone viewing platforms, many of these sub-peaks remain accessible only by footpaths once used by monks, hermits, and local ethnic minorities. Moss-covered staircases vanish into ravines, narrow trails wind past waterfalls that tumble in secret, and from narrow saddles high above the valleys, you can witness clouds pouring in like a white tide, cloaking the world in otherworldly silence. The terrain is steep, uneven, and often damp, but that difficulty is precisely what has preserved its untouched essence. These ridges are part of the broader Wuling mountain system, a range that snakes through eastern Guizhou and into neighboring Hunan and Chongqing, forming a transitional zone between the subtropical south and China's temperate heartland. That geographic in-betweenness, neither fully tropical nor truly temperate, has blessed the region with phenomenal ecological richness. Fanjingshan and its sub-peaks are one of China's most important centers of endemic life, with species found nowhere else in the world quietly persisting here in the undisturbed niches of the forest. One such species is the critically endangered Guizhou snub-nosed monkey, Rhinopithecus brelicai, a golden-furred primate that lives high in the canopy of the Fanjingshan forest complex. These monkeys, with expressive faces and long, elegant tails, travel in small family groups through the misty trees, feeding on lichen, buds, and fruit. Sighting one in the sub-peak regions is extremely rare, but traces, scat, gnawed branches, distant cries, suggest they still range across these ridges. Their continued existence is a tribute to how untouched these areas remain. Bird life here is dazzling in both diversity and color. Forest pheasants dash through underbrush while warblers, laughing thrushes, and thrushes animate the air with song. The Temminck's tragopan, a beautifully plumed and shy bird, finds sanctuary in the dense rhododendron thickets along the mid-altitudes. In spring, the forest canopy explodes into bloom. Magnolias, azaleas, and camellias all burst open in clouds of red, white, and pink, feeding pollinators and delighting any who wander under their reach. The perfume from these blossoms mixes with the earthy scent of wet stone and rotting leaf, creating an intoxicating mountain fragrance that no camera could ever capture. Culturally, these remote ridges are wrapped in layers of myth and faith. Though they lack the towering temples of the central peak, their silence holds deep reverence. Scattered throughout the forest are feng shui forests, sacred groves protected by local Miao and Tujia villagers for centuries, believed to house the spirits of ancestors and natural deities. In some hidden corners, one may stumble upon tiny shrines made of stacked stones and red cloth offerings tied to tree limbs, fluttering in the wind. These are the places where old beliefs, older than Buddhism, older than Taoism, still breathe quietly beneath the canopy. From time to time, one may also find abandoned hermit huts, simple stone or wood shelters once used by monks who sought enlightenment not through rituals or teachings, but by submitting themselves entirely to the rhythms of the mountain. Some of these hermits were Zen Buddhists, others were ascetic Taoists, a few belonged to no sect at all. They lived in harmony with nature, drinking from mountain streams, heating their huts with pine cones and dead branches, and meditating beneath waterfalls and under stars. Though many of these huts are now reclaimed by vines and moss, their presence lingers like footprints in dew, subtle reminders of lives lived in quiet pursuit of the infinite. Rain is a constant companion on these sub-peaks. The Wuling Mountains receive generous rainfall, and moisture wraps everything in a glistening sheen. Moss coats the trees like velvet. Ferns unfurl in ancient spirals. Slugs and salamanders inch across wet paths, and the occasional rustle in the bushes hints at a muntjac deer or a shy civet moving unseen through the undergrowth. Rivers, born from mountain springs, tumble through the forest in twisting courses, carving deep clefts into the red sandstone and forming hidden waterfalls with emerald plunge pools below. One such wonder is the Yunyang Trail, an obscure and rugged route leading to one of the more spectacular sub-peak ridgelines. The trail is narrow, slippery, and at times vanishingly steep, but those who persist are rewarded with unmatched solitude and 360-degree views across the green sprawl of Guilin. The peaks here are named for animals and ancient spirits: the Sleeping Tiger Ridge, the Immortal's Pillow, the Cloud Dragon Spire, names passed down from locals whose ancestors once used the terrain as both refuge and route. On particularly clear mornings, when the mist lifts, the main peak of Fanjingshan can be seen rising in the distance, a silhouette of sacred geometry hovering over the sea of forest. Access to the Fanjing sub-peaks is deliberately limited. Local authorities and conservationists have agreed to keep these regions free from heavy tourist infrastructure, allowing them to serve as ecological research zones and sanctuaries for endangered species. Eco-trekking and small guided expeditions are permitted in certain corridors, with local guides trained in both navigation and cultural sensitivity. There is no plastic, no concrete steps, no mobile signal in many places. What exists here is an atmosphere untouched, of breathing leaves, flowing water, and sky that feels impossibly close. At dusk, these sub-peaks become a realm of shadow and sound. The forest darkens quickly. Cicadas trade places with frogs, and the canopy becomes a tapestry of soft calls and rustling wings. Mists rise from the valleys like incense smoke, curling upward until they blanket the ridgelines in spectral white. Lanterns from distant hamlets flicker like fireflies on the slopes far below. It is at this hour that one most feels the spirit of the mountain, the sense that these peaks are not just geological features, but sentient, ancient beings watching over the land with slow, patient breath. To walk the Mount Fanjing sub-peaks is not simply to hike, but to disappear briefly into a forgotten fold of the world. Here, the trees remember, the rocks echo, and the very air seems thick with memory of monks and monkeys, spirits and storms, rain and silence. It is one of the last places in China where the original contract between nature and reverence remains unbroken. In the steamy southern reaches of Yunnan province, where the edges of China blur into the tropical pulse of Southeast Asia, rises a mountain seldom mentioned in glossy travel brochures, yet profound in both spirit and natural grandeur, Mount Qianbao, or Qianbei. Lying on the borderlands near Zhishuangbanna, a region synonymous with jungles, elephants, monsoons, and a kaleidoscope of ethnic cultures, Qianbei is a karst mountain veiled in dense subtropical forest. Its limestone ridges rise like ancient fangs through the canopy, weathered into spires, natural bridges, and caves by millennia of water and wind. Here, nature thrives in full bloom, and human life flows in vibrant, traditional rhythms unchanged for generations. Qianbei belongs to the larger Indo-Malayan ecozone and forms part of the last true tropical rainforest ecosystem on Chinese soil. It is a cradle of biodiversity and cultural depth, where monsoon clouds gather over rainforest peaks and sunlight filters down through leaves the size of umbrellas. The forest, layered and alive, stretches from the valley floor to jagged heights, every elevation bringing new scents, new sounds, new secrets. The mountain's foundation is karst, porous limestone shaped into strange, dramatic forms by the persistent carving of water. Rainwater, slightly acidic from carbon dioxide in the air, slowly dissolves the rock, leaving behind narrow crests, sinkholes, hidden valleys, and sprawling cave systems. Qianbei's limestone formations are fantastical in shape. Some resemble the ribs of slumbering giants, others form arches that seem hand-sculpted by mythical artisans. Vines and creepers wrap these features in green lace, and mosses coat them in soft textures, blurring the boundaries between stone and life. The forest that clings to Qianbei is prime val. Banyan trees send down aerial roots that twist like ropes. Towering dipterocarps rise like columns in a ruined palace. Ferns as large as a man stretch toward filtered light, and orchids bloom from mossy branches high above the ground. Cicadas cry like sirens through the afternoon heat, and at night, the forest trembles with the rustling of nocturnal life. Bats, civets, owls, and creatures rarely seen by humans. This ecosystem, fed by the tropical climate and the mountain's complex terrain, is astonishingly rich. The area around Qianbeixian supports hundreds of bird species, including hornbills, trogons, and drongos with forked tails that dance in the sunlight. Reptiles and amphibians abound, and the undergrowth is alive with beetles, stick insects, and butterflies so large and vividly colored they seem plucked from dreams. Mammals like the elusive clouded leopard, wild boars, and the endangered Indo-Chinese black bear find sanctuary in its more remote valleys. And just to the south, in the lower forests of Zhishuangbanna, one may even hear the distant calls of Asian elephants, China's last wild herds. But as vivid as the natural life is, Qianbeixian is equally steeped in human culture, particularly that of the Dai, Han, and Yi ethnic groups who have called this region home for centuries. Their villages, often built along the lower slopes and foothills, are constructed of timber and bamboo, with tiled or thatched roofs, and are arranged according to principles of balance with nature and ancestral spirits. Rice paddies and tea gardens spread out like green silk beneath the forest's edge, and wooden shrines the trails leading into the mountain, dedicated to mountain spirits, rain gods, or family ancestors. The Dai people, in particular, see Qianbeixian as sacred. Known for their Theravada Buddhist beliefs and close cultural ties to northern Thailand and Laos, the Dai have temples adorned with golden stupas and sloped roofs in their valleys, many of which face toward or are situated beneath Qianbeixian's looming profile. In local legend, Qianbeixian is said to be the resting place of a sky-born elephant who laid down to sleep, and whose back became the forested ridgeline we see today. During festivals such as Water Splashing Festival, the Dai New Year, the mountain becomes a place of pilgrimage. Monks and villagers ascend its slopes with offerings of fruit, incense, and rice, chanting sutras beneath the canopy as birds call overhead. The Han people, known for their terrace farming and animist rituals, also maintain a strong connection to the mountain. Their oral traditions speak of mountain guardians, spirit beings who dwell in the caves and protect the balance of rain, forest, and village. Certain trees, especially ancient banyans or kapok trees, are believed to house these spirits and are thus never cut. The Yi people, whose culture is laced with shamanic practices and elaborate embroidery, hold seasonal ceremonies on Qianbeixian's forest fringes, burning pine branches and reading omens in rising smoke. Exploring Qianbeixian is no casual hike. The terrain is steep and at times almost vertical, with narrow ridgelines and sudden drop-offs. There are few formal trails, though local guides from nearby villages know the forest intimately and can lead travelers to hidden glades, sacred springs, and ancient trees that have watched the passing of centuries. The air is thick and humid, especially during the monsoon months, and clouds often roll in without warning, turning bright days into deep twilight within minutes. But for those willing to brave the climb, Qianbeixian reveals wonders. Limestone cathedrals draped in green, waterfalls tumbling into fern-laced pools, and cave mouths that exhale cool breath into the jungle heat. One of the most enigmatic features of the mountain is its cave systems. Many have yet to be fully explored, their entrances hidden behind veils of foliage or located along sheer rock faces. Some echo with underground rivers, while others harbor species of blind fish, albino crickets, and troglodytic spiders. In certain caves, ancient inscriptions or shamanic symbols mark the walls, evidence of millennia of human reverence. These caves are places of power, where monks and mystics have meditated for days or weeks at a time, seeking communion with the deep, with the earth, or with whatever ancient force seems to hum in the stones. In recent years, efforts have been made to balance conservation with respectful ecotourism. Small eco-lodges operated by local families now offer accommodations at the mountain's base, where visitors can experience traditional meals, learn about medicinal herbs, and listen to folklore passed down across generations. Solar-powered lighting and biodegradable infrastructure help minimize human impact, and cultural immersion experiences, like joining a tea harvest or attending a forest ritual, are conducted with consent and care. At sunset, Qianbeixian transforms. The light grows golden and soft, filtering through layers of canopy like the glow of temple lanterns. Mist rises from the forest floor, and the distant chatter of macaques echoes from unseen cliffs. As darkness spreads, the sky comes alive with stars, uninhibited by city light. Fireflies blink in and out near the trails, and the entire mountain takes on a dreamlike quality, an untouched bastion of life, memory, and myth, suspended between the known and the forgotten. Mount Tianbao is not a destination. It is an initiation. To walk its paths is to step beyond the everyday and into a realm where forest and spirit, nature and culture, wilderness and story weave together into a single, breathing reality. It is one of the last true wild sanctuaries of China's south, a place that guards not only species and ecosystems, but also the timeless bond between people and the living mountain that watches over them. In the dreamlike karst wonderland of Guangxi, where mist floats lazily over jade-green rivers and limestone peaks rise like silent sentinels from an emerald plain, one mountain stands apart, not for its size, but for its singular, almost mystical formation. This is Mount Yunyang, or Yuliangshan, the fabled moon mountain, a natural stone arch carved over millennia through the summit of a solitary limestone peak, creating the illusion of a full moon suspended high above the earth. A timeless icon of the Guilin Yangshuo landscape, Moon Mountain feels less like something formed by nature and more like the work of a celestial artisan, a monument designed for reflection, balance, and awe. Located just a few kilometers south of Yangshuo town, in the heart of the Li River karst basin, Mount Yuliang rises with quiet elegance from a forested plain. At a glance, the mountain is deceptively ordinary, just another of the countless limestone spires scattered across this ancient seabed. But from the right angle, the mountain reveals its secret, a massive, almost perfectly round hole, some 50 meters wide and 50 meters tall, punched cleanly through its upper summit. The opening resembles a moon at various phases depending on the time of day and the angle of light. At dawn, the arch frames the rising sun in glowing hues of gold and violet. At dusk, it captures the fading daylight like a luminous eye watching over the valley. On full moon nights, if viewed from the right direction, the real moon aligns with the mountain's arch, glowing eerily in the center like a pearl in a dragon's mouth. This surreal structure is the result of millions of years of natural erosion, karst weathering at its most sublime. The surrounding region was once covered by a vast, shallow sea during the Paleozoic era, which deposited thick layers of limestone and dolomite. Over time, tectonic uplift and the relentless carving power of rain and underground rivers sculpted the landscape into what is now one of the most celebrated karst topographies in the world. What remains is a sea of stone. Peaks, ridges, sinkholes, and arches. Moon Mountain's arch was likely once a cave chamber, slowly hollowed out by subterranean water and later exposed to the surface as the surrounding stone collapsed or eroded away, leaving behind this magnificent natural aperture at the mountaintop. Despite its proximity to Yangshuo, a magnet for backpackers, painters, climbers, and poets from around the world, Moon Mountain retains a hushed dignity. It is visible from many parts of the countryside, especially from the Yulong River Valley, where cyclists and bamboo rafting travelers often catch their first glimpse of its crescent shape through the morning mist. Locals call it the moon that never sets, and many legends surround its creation. In one tale, a celestial archer shot a flaming arrow into the heavens to impress a weaver girl, piercing the mountain in the process. In another, the mountain was split open by a grieving goddess, whose tears turned into the rivers that now flow gently through the valley. Reaching the arch is an adventure in itself. A well-worn stone stairway, over 800 steps in all, winds through thick subtropical forest up the flanks of the mountain. Bamboo groves whisper in the wind, and birdsong floats through the cool understory. Butterflies drift lazily across the path, and the occasional macaque may be spotted darting through the trees. Halfway up the climb, there are small viewing pavilions where travelers can pause to catch their breath and admire the quilted patchwork of rice paddies, orchards, and winding rivers below. At the summit, the view through the arch is arresting, an immense circular window opening onto a sea of peaks that ripple outward to the horizon like frozen waves. On clear days, the view encompasses dozens of jagged karst towers, draped in forest and rising sharply from the flat floodplain like the spines of some slumbering creature. Standing beneath the arch, one feels dwarfed not only by scale, but by silence. The wind funnels through the opening in great gusts, and the ground underfoot is rough, fossil-laced limestone that crackles with ancient time. Photographers come here for the light, which dances through the arch in strange and shifting ways. Painters and poets, especially in the Chinese tradition, have long sought inspiration here, seeking to capture in brushstrokes and ink what the heart cannot express in words. The arch has appeared in calligraphy, landscape scrolls, and even in classical poetry since the Ming dynasty. It is not just a geological feature, it is a portal between the earthly and the sublime, between stillness and movement, between presence and eternity. But while Moon Mountain dazzles visually, it is also a microcosm of southern China's ecological and cultural wealth. The mountain and its surrounding forests are home to a remarkable diversity of life. Orchids cling to vertical cliffs, and medicinal herbs long valued by local Zhuang and Yao communities grow in the forest shade. Colorful birds, partridges, minivets, sunbirds, flit through the trees. Bats inhabit the surrounding limestone caves, some of which extend deep beneath the landscape, forming subterranean rivers and echo chambers of ancient water songs. The local people have long regarded the mountain with respect. The nearby villages of Gaoqian and Baishaw still observe annual rituals in which offerings are made at the foot of the mountain to honor local deities and ancestors. Farmers raise ducks in the flooded paddies, grow pomelos and oranges in the valley below, and continue to live much as their ancestors did, guided by the rhythm of the seasons and the unshakable presence of the mountain looming over their daily lives. In recent years, rock climbers from around the globe have discovered the area, drawn by the perfect vertical walls and overhangs that karst limestone provides. Moon Mountain, and the cliffs that flank it, are now part of a world-class climbing zone, though efforts are in place to balance this activity with conservation. New eco-trails and small interpretive centers have been developed, providing education about the karst landscape, its delicate ecology, and the spiritual stories passed down through generations. At night, the mountain fades into silhouette, and the moon, ironically, rises in the actual sky. On clear nights, you can stand in the rice paddies below and watch the lunar light pass through the arch of stone above, as though one moon were reaching to touch its twin. The stars gather around it. Fireflies spark across the fields. The sound of frogs and cicadas weaves a lullaby through the warm air. It is then that Moon Mountain transcends even its breathtaking form and becomes something else, a living monument not just to erosion or time, but to harmony. It reminds you that some places exist not to be conquered or consumed, but simply to be witnessed, to be honored, to be folded gently into the stories we tell ourselves about the sublime, the mysterious, and the quietly eternal. In the remote southeastern stretches of Chongqing Municipality, where the towering cliffs of the Wuling Mountains fade into forested plateaus and time-worn river valleys, lies a little-known but geologically dramatic landscape, the Mount Yunyang Longgang Volcanic Group. Far from the tourist-thronged urban centers of China, this terrain is among the few volcanic remnants in the country, a ghost of Earth's fiery past preserved in stone, water, and silence. Characterized by rugged ridgelines, ancient crater lakes, basalt cliffs, sinkholes, and a dizzying natural karst bridge that defies belief, the Yunyang Longgang area is not only a showcase of powerful geological forces but a sanctuary of primal beauty and untouched wilderness. This volcanic group sits near the township of Longgang in Yunyang County, within the upper reaches of the Yangtze River basin. What makes it especially unique in China is its hybrid geological profile. It's a place where ancient volcanic activity has fused with extensive karst development, forming a rare and astonishing combination of collapsed calderas, vertical pit caves, plunging gorges, and sharp igneous ridges. Though the original volcanic eruptions that shaped this terrain occurred millions of years ago, their legacy is carved into every cliff, crater, and winding trail. The centerpiece of this wild domain is Longgang Qianqing, literally Dragon Vat Sinkhole. Though technically not a volcanic crater but a giant karst sinkhole that collapsed where an underground cave once existed, it blends seamlessly into the surrounding volcanic ridges and is often considered part of the Greater Longgang Geological Group. This titanic chasm, over 300 meters deep and nearly 400 meters wide, is among the largest of its kind in Asia. Peering into its depths is both thrilling and humbling. The walls drop nearly vertically, lined with moss, wild vines, and ancient trees that cling to the rock like green waterfalls. From its floor, a micro-ecosystem thrives in a separate world, home to rare ferns, cave-dwelling species, and medicinal herbs unknown to science until recently. Above this great sinkhole stretches one of the most jaw-dropping human-made walkways in China, the Longgang Glass Skywalk, a transparent, horseshoe-shaped bridge suspended high over the pit's rim. From this vantage point, visitors feel as if they are walking on air above a primeval abyss. The sensation is not unlike hovering over the broken shell of the Earth itself, an illusion of lightness above a wound of unimaginable depth. But beyond this single pit lies an entire volcanic field, long dormant yet geologically alive in every feature. The Yunyang volcanic group includes more than 10 known volcanic cones and extinct vents, their shapes worn down by time but still unmistakable in the terrain's rhythm. These cones are not towering stratovolcanoes but ancient shield formations, built from basaltic lava that once flowed in waves across the land. Their slopes are now softened by centuries of vegetation, cloaked in pine and bamboo forests, moss-covered rocks, and whispering grasses. The air carries a unique coolness and clarity, and in spring and autumn, mists drift across the ridgelines, revealing and concealing craters like secrets too old to speak aloud. Among the most beautiful features of the Yunyang volcanic group are its crater lakes, some tiny, others surprisingly expansive. One particularly striking example is Yunyang Lake, nestled in a collapsed caldera at high elevation. Its water is a deep, glassy blue, reflecting the surrounding cliffs and clouds with a near mystical stillness. The lake's depth and isolation have preserved its purity, and the locals say that it changes color with the seasons, from emerald green in summer to smoky gray in the winter fog. On still mornings, dragonflies hover like living jewels above its surface, and the only sounds are the rustle of wind and the occasional cry of an eagle wheeling above the forest. The ecology of the area is as diverse as its geology. These mountains and valleys support a surprisingly rich range of flora and fauna. In its more secluded corners, the Yunyang region shelters pangolins, wild boars, masked civets, and several bird species that are either migratory or endemic to southwestern China. Amphibians, especially salamanders and frogs, thrive in the moist, cratered landscape, often hiding in the undergrowth or echoing their calls from deep within pit caves. The forest underlayers are rich with mushrooms, mosses, and lichens, while the upper canopies provide roosting ground for owls and hawks. Botanists have identified hundreds of plant species here, many with medicinal value, including wild ginseng and ghost flowers that bloom in the shaded crevices near the lakes and gorges. Human presence in the Yunyang volcanic region is light and respectful, shaped by centuries of coexistence with an often daunting landscape. Small hamlets, built with stone and timber, sit on the edges of the volcanic cones and ridges, their people descendants of the Tujia and Han settlers who learned to live with the land's fierce character. Farming here is limited to flatter pockets of land and terraces, often centered around hardy crops like maize, sweet potatoes, and mountain herbs. It's common to see prayer flags or stone altars near cave entrances and high passes, evidence of long-standing animist beliefs tied to the mountain spirits and the Earth's deep energies. Ancient legends surrounding the region are both eerie and sacred. One tale speaks of a fiery dragon that once lived beneath the mountain, whose final battle with a celestial tiger shattered the ground and created the vast sinkhole now known as the Dragon Vat. Others tell of spirits trapped in the crater lakes, whose songs are carried by the wind through the narrow gullies and overgrown trails. These stories have persisted for generations, passed down by firelight, and reflected in local festivals that honor both ancestors and the land itself. Despite its seclusion, the region has become a focus for sustainable geotourism. The Chongqing authorities have worked to preserve its fragile geological and ecological systems while allowing limited access through designated eco-routes and observation platforms. Adventure seekers, photographers, geologists, and lovers of the raw and elemental are slowly discovering the area, drawn by its ruggedness, mystery, and the sense that here, more than in many manicured parks, nature still roars with silent power. At dusk, the entire landscape transforms. The sun, sinking behind ancient ridges, casts golden light across the crater walls and crater lakes, igniting the sky in orange and violet. Shadows stretch long across the basalt stones, and mists rise from the forest floor like smoke from forgotten fires. The night air carries a deep silence, broken only by the hoot of an owl or the distant trickle of water running through lava tubes long cooled. Standing on a volcanic overlook, with a yawning pit of Yunyang below and a horizon of ridged volcanic ghosts ahead, one feels both the brevity of human time and the eternity of the forces that shape this land. The Mount Yunyang Yunyang volcanic group is not merely a geographic feature. It is a monument to the Earth's restless creativity, a sanctuary where fire once flowed and silence now reigns. It is a place where the geological and the spiritual intertwine, where every stone tells of explosions long past and where every shadow hints at a story still unfolding. This video is for educational or entertainment purposes only, and information provided in the video may be incorrect. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing to the channel and like the video.